Because you've got powerful legs. How'd you get the physique? Was it gym or how'd you get the physique?
I've always been...
She's actually not got powerful legs. Do you shower in your dressing room? Do you have a shower on the day of a fight or not? Tell us about the tattoos.
Shut the fuck up, you little prick.
But then I've got the Phoenix.
Hey, prick.
So I'll take it from Bob every day of the week.
Absolute disgrace.
That's your knowing mind.
Move him out of here, there.
Ricky Hatton didn't go over for his fighter because he risked getting abducted and sold into sexual
I never said that.
Both have been rape victims. I'm not watching Frank Buglioni live on Saturday night. You're out of your mind.
Jesus Christ, get yourself a life.
He's actually a priest.
Yeah.
It's because his brother John Fury eye gouged him.
What have I told you all this time? He's going to end up sucked out, fucked out, looking for a handout.
Boxing nutters messenger group. I'm gonna be the king.
J-Pump. You know what I'm saying?
Well, hello everybody, and welcome to the 541st edition of the Boxing Asylum Nuthouse podcast. I'm your host, Steve Wellings, and joining me on the call, we have Matty Di Gialinardo, going live on YouTube from 8 o'clock every Sunday evening. The ad-free Patreon RSS feed updates shortly after the show concludes. Hello to everybody listening through the week on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Sports Social. Don't forget to leave a review on the podcast player of your choice throughout the entire month of September. Nothing less than 5 stars is acceptable. No Andy this week, unfortunately. He is off sunning him. Well, maybe not sunning himself. He's off on holiday anyway. Aussie's still in America as well. I've got a bit of a scratchy throat, as I said to you off air, Matty, which could be a problem in this particular medium, but we're gonna rumble on.
What matters? You might have a scratchy throat, but you paid the bills. Those are the sacrifices that a man sometimes must make for his family.
Absolutely. I've spent the whole day with Mrs. Wellington since 5 o'clock this morning, so that is a heavy price for any man to pay, let me tell you. I've paid my dues. I'm hoping I can get into the championship rounds at least to 2 hours. Got a load of Bellew of the weeks, a few questions, a few comments, quite a few fights to talk about. If anybody wants to come on and help me and save me, if you feel sorry for Matty and Steve on this Sunday evening in the chat, shout out to everybody there. I have put the link in right now for StreamYard. You are very welcome to jump on and have a chat with us if you wish. So let's have a look at the action over the weekend. Only one place to start, as I often say, the Wembley Arena. Frank Warren was the promoter, and the outcome wasn't to his liking. It wasn't something that he would have favoured. Joyce getting beaten in the rematch more decisively than their first fight when he lost by a busted-up eye in round 6, I think it was. This was a dominating third-round KO win for Zhilei Zhang. Joyce was counted out after being dropped by a right hook to the head, it says over on BoxRec. He came in heavy, Matty. He came in a lot heavier than the first fight. I think it was about 25 pounds or so. And I thought to myself, okay, he's maybe going to get inside on Zhang. We know Zhang early on, nice fast hand, looked decent, puts the shots together well. Late on in the fight, he gasses a bit. He's had renal failure in the past, which is no joke. And fair play to him. The guy's got balls. He fought on through. But we thought, well, I thought at least, that Joyce was going to lean on him, weigh him down, use that extra weight. But when he came in heavy and sluggish and then stepped off and tried to box, it was just too slow to do that, Matthew. What was he thinking?
I don't think any of that made sense whatsoever, Steve. It was ridiculous. Nothing about this fight really made sense. Zhang, an interesting guy in the heavyweight division, obviously. I mean, just that right hook he landed on Joyce was just fucking destructive. And fair play to Joyce for getting up at all. Usually when someone lands flat on their face, they don't even get to their feet. You know, it's done. So I mean, he's a tough son of a bitch. But the plan was all wrong. The bookies were all wrong on this one, Steve. You figured that they would have made Zhang a heavy favorite, but it was still close to even on him. And the over-under was 10.5 rounds. I jumped on that way early thinking it would get bought down. It didn't. And we ended up with a 3-round destruction. How anyone thought this was going long, I don't know. I figured both guys were coming in there to do damage. Joyce because he felt he needed to earn his respect, and Zhang because he had no respect for Joyce. And the only guy who fought in the way that I thought that they might was Zhang, but that was enough to clear that under 10.5 by leaps and bounds there. It's a shock. I don't know what they were thinking in the Joyce corner with that. They should have closed the distance, mauled him, try to nullify that left hand, make it sloppy. You don't have to always entertain. Sometimes you got to get the W, and if getting the W means getting a title shot potentially, that should be it. So the tactic was wrong. I think it's probably time for Salas and Joyce to separate ways. I'm not saying Salas is a bad trainer. I'm not like these guys getting on him saying he's flavor of the month, but because he's had plenty of success. I personally think, Steve, success is probably easier attained when you're not dealing with a language barrier. I mean, that's kind of neither here nor there, but I think that's just a very simple thought on that. It's hard sometimes when you don't share the same language, at least in a strong sense, to really get through those instructions that you're trying to get through, especially in a pinch in between rounds. So we'll see what goes on from here. Joyce apparently wants to keep going with his career. Zhang is a mandatory, and he's in good position, I think, with pretty much all the sanctioning bodies. So Usyk or Fury is going to have to fight him. If for some reason they're able to sidestep that, I would not mind a rematch with Hrgovic. Wasn't a great fight, but it was close. It was controversial. He got the L on that one.
Yeah.
We'll see, but I mean, absolutely impressed by the big man. It was just a really incredible display of power right there, and maybe those punches accumulated on Joyce, but that right hook, that was.
Absolutely. No, I've always thought this about Zhang right early on, that we have these kind of giant heavyweights, the Dong, I think was the other Chinese one, Tai Fields as well a few years ago. And I looked at Zhang early on in his career and I thought, okay, he's not a world beater, but I've seen a lot worse than this guy. The way he puts his shots together, he's actually decent. He's 40 years old, 20 stone. He can clearly absolutely crack as well. Talking
quick for a fucking 300-pound 40-year-old.
Yeah.
Dude, shit.
Yeah, and Joyce just couldn't get out the way of the left hands. Ricky Graville dropped in $4.99. Shout out to him. He says Johnny Fisher Sr.'s fate will be similar to Joyce's, as he too will be taken out by a huge Chinese. So shout out to Ricky Graville for that one. Also, ABC has thrown in £2. He says, sharing my drug dealing profits for the lads. He must be selling paracetamol or something if he's only thrown in £2 for us. And also,
no, I'm telling you what, Steve,
yes.
Inflation is crazy and inflation isn't everything. So I think ABC is a drug dealer who cares about his clients, and he has been taking the hit on the reduced profits on his end to make sure that his clients are still, just chock full of drugs. So, fair play to ABC. Thanks for the couple bucks.
Yeah, absolutely. Taking the hit so his customers don't have to. Also, shouting out to Chris Butler, who threw in a super chat right at the death, right at dawn's crack as we were getting out of here last week. He threw in a super chat for us, did Chris Butler. So it would be remiss of me not to give him a shout out. You mentioned the translation there, the lost in translation, the language barrier, Matty. Do you think that Ismail Salas was saying a certain thing and the sort of nefarious, devious translator was saying, Joe, make sure you're slow, make sure you're easy to hit, make sure you're technically limited. Now your chin's been cracked, Joe. Make sure you take as many punches as you possibly can. Are those some of the instructions Salas was sending over to him, do you think?
Yeah, there was something amiss in there. Joyce didn't, if there's anything, Steve, it might come down to this. I think that in that first fight, Zhang took Joyce's confidence. He didn't fight with any confidence. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's probably the biggest thing that happened from that first fight is Joyce just doesn't have his confidence. And I know that he's slightly a smaller guy, but I mean he looked just smaller than Zhang in that ring, like markedly, and it's just kind of amazing how that, like your physicality kind of shrinks along with your confidence there. So we'll see. It'd be a hell of a rebuilding process. I'd like to see Joyce maybe take on some of these up and coming youngsters that have some glossy records, deal with some domestic stuff over there. I don't think he's going to be world level, but he's got a W over Takam, Parker, etc. He's somewhere around European, high British level. He might have a few more left in him, but choose those moments correctly, because I didn't like the way he was taking those shots.
Yeah, he's European fringe, I think, but he's definitely, as Matty said, bought into the hype about his chin. I know they were making memes about it, but it seems like just taking the shots became part of his makeup, part of his arsenal, for want of a better expression. And if you take too many shots, eventually someone with a decent crack is going to absolutely bang you, as Zhang did. Kaiser Koba was saying earlier, I didn't quite catch the comment, he feels Zhang is a favourite over AJ. He also says here, I thought it was close at the time, but watching it back a few months ago, Zhang definitely deserved the decision. In the Hrgovic fight, I also thought that as well, Mr. Koba. MB says the plan was right early, move head, and then move to the left. Then he got hurt in the second round, and he just stood in front of Zhang. And here's an interesting one from Andrew Thickett. He says, my fellow Black Panther boxing fans believe Warren wanted Zhang to beat Joyce again, as revenge for the latter derailing Frank's young starlet. No idea if it's true. There might be some truth in that jesting comment there, actually, Matty. Would Frank put Daniel Dubois in with Zhang? I absolutely doubt it. Plus, I've always wondered, Frank favoured Dubois. We clearly saw that. When he put him and Joyce together that time during COVID in the Albert Hall or the Westminster House, whatever it was, I think he wanted Dubois and expected Dubois to win that fight. He's been continuously matching and promoting Dubois towards a world title shot, even though he lost that night, whereas Joyce has been continually match tough, really, including these two fights with Zhang as well. Is Frank glad to get Joyce out of the road and continue with Triple D?
I don't think that was the case. I think because of Joyce's age, Frank knew he had to take an accelerated track with Joyce after. I honestly, he probably did want Dubois to win the fight versus Joyce, but when that didn't work, he's like, well, I got a young fighter, I can still kind of maneuver, and he still ended up with Usyk recently, and then I got this old guy, we got to kind of try to take him to the top and take him quick, see if he can do it, and it didn't happen. But I think everybody probably made a few bucks off of Joyce at the end of the day. So, what are you going to say? It's capitalism.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, look, capitalism here on the Boxing Asylum. Get those super chats coming in thick and fast. Des says, what I saw last night, Joyce looks shot. Way he fights will be the way he spars. Good point. I thought he'd win, but I didn't like what I saw. Price, AJ, Joe Joyce, they all fell off a cliff after they got chinned. I have that on my notes as well, actually. Not quite as... the way Des is saying it, but the outcome was reminiscent a bit, Matty, of David Price going straight back in with Tony Thompson. In hindsight, another ill-advised decision. You could say, what else could they do with Joyce? He had to try and right this wrong, but much like Price against Thompson, didn't work out.
Yeah, I mean, regarding, asking what Frank has against Joyce, I mean, what the hell did anyone have against Mrs. Thompson?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
It's
exactly.
It's madness. But, I think... Look what they did with Seth Mitchell, though, after Jonathan Banks beat him. They put him in again, and he actually beat Jonathan Banks in a fight that, if there was ever a fight where I thought that somebody might have gotten paid off, it was Jonathan Banks in that rematch, or just two sparring partner mentality, just not to take it too far. But, I mean, that happens, and I actually think that's a good way to go at the end of the day. If these guys, especially more so, seems with the heavyweights, they're going for the top, and if they run into a little bit of a roadblock, send them back in again. It seems to be kind of just old hat for what they do with heavyweights. Not necessarily against it, because sometimes it does change around, I mean, there's been plenty of heavyweight rematches that have gone the opposite direction the second time around. The Mitchell fight, obviously, and then bigger ones with Lewis, et cetera, et cetera. But what the fuck? Give him another shot at it. If it doesn't work, one guy moves up, the other guy moves out.
Yep, 100% true. Jim McDonough Boxing says Zhang breaking his wife's hip as we speak. So he is Stevie. I've thrown the chat link in. Sorry, I've thrown the link in to the chat again there. If you want to jump on the call with me and Matty, talk a bit of Joyce against Zhang, talk a bit of Canelo-Charlo later on, then you are more than welcome to do so. Frank Warren said afterwards that he'd signed Zhang, or he maybe had some kind of promotional options on him. He said in the the post-fight interview. So Frank is now steering Zhang's career. Does that fill you with dread, Matty, as much as it does for me? The skeptic in me says that they signed these guys to kind of keep them out the road, a la Luis Ortiz about 6 or 7 years ago, rather than promote a 40-year-old Chinaman any further than necessary.
You know what, though? I'll tell you, Steve, I kind of like that because Warren works for Top Rank, and even though it might not happen, you got me thinking about Zhang versus Jared Anderson. I like that fight. So
no chance they'll make that, I don't think.
Quit pissing in my Cheerios.
Sorry.
Can't I just like have anything, like any joy?
He's far too dangerous, isn't it? He's far too dangerous, especially look at the way Charles Martin was landing.
Yeah, but you got to get him somewhere at some point and get him some paydays, give him a chance at a title shot. I mean, unless, I know he said he's in it for the money and stuff like that. Well, how much money is he going to make just, fighting these fucking, chumps every fucking few months? I'm optimistic, Steve. I'm going to say if they can't make the Fury fight, maybe they'll make Jared Anderson versus Zhang next year. That's what I'm saying.
Matt Butters said if Frank has taken Zhang, then Bricktop is looking to chuck him in with Dubois. I'm not convinced of that. I think, let me know in the chat if you think I'm wrong on that one. I think Zhang would beat Dubois, to be honest. And Mike Hunt is making a right hunt out of me as well. He said the idea that Frank, who invested in Joyce, bought out his contract, paid for Parker, and Zhang twice to come over, wanted Joyce to lose because he beat Dubois 4 years ago is one of the dumb as fuck. And then he's let me off the hook there with the rest of it. So fair play, Mr. Hunt. I'll take that one on the chin. Much like Joe Joyce himself, Dominic has jumped on the call. He loved it that much last week. He's decided to give up another Sunday to spend it with me and Matty this week rather than me and Andy. Good evening, Dominic. You're more than welcome. Joe Joyce, I don't know if you're on the prediction league or not, Dominic, but did you foresee this? Like Bunsey was happy, Dominic, after that first round. Joe was moving to his left. I like what I see, says Bunsey. And then about 10 minutes later, he's going on about, he didn't look right, Carl. He didn't look right to me before the fight.
Aye, Bunce talks some, he can, on live broadcasting, he's a car crash, but in terms of whether I saw it coming, I was just trying to think back to what I actually was saying last week, and I think I said I could see the same thing as the first fight, but perhaps a few rounds later. So I can't really claim that I've foreseen what actually transpired last night and how quickly it all unraveled. But in terms of, I mean, the first round was a sort of your classic feeling out round. I mean, there wasn't much happening, but I mean, as soon as the second round was just picked up where the first fight left off, really, it was Zhang just couldn't miss him, and I don't know what Bunce was. I suppose we'll get them later in the values, but it was just I don't really know where Joyce. Have you touched yet on where Joyce goes from here?
No, lead us into that, Dominic, please.
Yeah, well, I was just I've sort of been saying it a bit in another chat. I think we were debating it with a few of the guys that if I was sort of as I said last week, I think I'm no less reluctant to call on a fighter to hang them up than I am to call a fighter a quitter. It's not for me to say, but if I had Joyce's ear, and I cared about him, in terms of like a friend or a family member, I would be imploring him to think long and hard about continuing, because he's been taking big heavy shots for, even in those fights that he was winning, even in like the Parker fight, people, you think back to the early rounds of that Parker fight before he really asserted himself and started to roll over Parker. He took some flush shots.
Those were the hardest shots that Parker has landed in the last 5 years of his career, and Joyce soaked them up.
Yeah, and it's interesting just to think about that. What Bunce and Frampton were talking about after I continued to watch that on my stream after the fight ended, and they were talking about how a fighter like that, who relies on their chin, once that chin is shown to be vulnerable, that it's all downhill from there, because what Joyce's qualities that really the things that allowed him to win fights, his stamina, his engine, his work rate, those were built really a lot on the foundation of his ability to take the sort of punches that not many fighters at that level can take. And once you take that foundation away, you can't sort of you can't assert your stamina and your engine. You can't bank on these things because you're not going to have the chance to use them. So it's I think that the thing is, how's he going to get a shot? He's 38 now. How is he going to get a shot at a world title anytime soon? You're talking he's going to have to work his way into a mandatory position. I think. I think it's unless it depends what his ambitions are. If his ambitions are to still win a world title, then I think that's pie in the sky stuff. But if he's happy to be involved in sort of fights against the likes of the winner of Wardley against Adelaide, or Dubois coming back from an Usyk defeat, the Usyk defeat. But even that, I mean, what does Joyce have to gain from a Dubois fight? Danny Young was saying that he would probably make Dubois a favourite in that fight now against Joyce. I would probably agree. I think Dubois would probably start any rematch with Joyce as a favourite. What does Joyce? There's no real money. It's not as if a Dubois rematch is a huge.
What has Dubois done to show that he could beat Joyce though? He fucking quit.
Yeah, but that's just because you quit. That's a different question.
And what was his work rate like prior to that? He was totally past.
Different opponent though, in different situations.
Exactly, Matty. You're talking. You can't compare Usyk and Joyce. I mean,
no, you can't. But he's too passive. I think he's too passive of a fighter now. I wouldn't favor Dubois against Joyce. I mean, yeah, put it in as the battle of broken toys. I wouldn't take Dubois over Joyce.
Well, whatever we think about what would happen for Joyce, there's nothing to gain from Joyce from taking that fight. Because what I was going to say is, it's not as if it's a big. That fight sell out Wembley? Probably just about. Wembley. I'm not talking about Wembley Stadium, by the way. I'm talking about Wembley Arena. By the way, that's a mistake. Terry Atlas, when he was previewing this fight last week, he was all saying, "I've got to hand it to you folks across the pond. You're selling out Wembley." He was talking as if he thought it was Wembley Stadium that was being sold out for this fight.
80,000.
That we've just seen last night, as opposed to the arena. So
I think, Dominic, just quickly, sorry, before I forget this point, I think it's interesting what you said about Joyce as well. He seems to me as one of those fighters now that once the chin's been cracked, anyone half decent will just go for him straight away. And then mentally, is the resistance going to be there? It's almost as if like his things that he was bringing to the table are exhaustible assets. Like people say, oh, the last thing to go is your punch. And you always have that puncher's chance. But when you're relying on your chin, or you're like relying on athleticism, like the likes of Roy Jones did, etc. Those are exhaustible assets, and once they start to diminish and disappear, you're in a whole lot of trouble. Whereas the punchers and the guys with the stamina and the engine tend to go on that bit longer. So I'm going around the houses to say that I think that Joyce's chin's been cracked here, and he might get back to a certain level, but anyone decent's going to jump on him like crazy now.
And the other thing is, referees are going to be less inclined now to give him the benefit of the doubt. Mm-hmm. If he's in trouble and someone's teeing off on him, I think referees won't need to be. Some referees will be quite eager to just jump in there and call it off. So yeah,
well, not Ian John Lewis, as we'll talk about later anyway. There's another point I was going to bring up to you actually, Dominic. A bit of a sort of. I can't even think of the word, but anyway, Joyce walked into the ring. I thought when he walked into the ring, I know that it's a hindsight 2020 and all that type of stuff, but he just looked like a beaten man to me. And playing that Hallelujah song, I thought right away at the time when I was watching it, that was a mistake. Because I was
what kind of Katie Taylor shit is this?
That's exactly what I've written. We all saw back to Katie Taylor when she entered the ring to that dirge. And then Joyce, he just looked like a man who was walking in to the gallows or something, ready to be flipping killed off. And Taylor made the same mistake as well, man. We can't have hymns. We can't have religious hymns before
Didn't
fights,
he look
man.
sad walking to the ring too? Like, I swear, Joyce he looked sad. I don't know what it was.
Well, I didn't. My stream only kicked in when Joyce was already in the ring, so I didn't see. But I heard Bunst and Frampton talking about that after the fight. That his ring walk, he didn't look happy. They were saying like he didn't look like he was in the place that he wanted to be.
He walked into someone singing Hallelujah.
Yeah. Well, it reminds me of, a fight I always like watching back is Michael Grant against Lennox Lewis.
Yes.
And Grant walked to the ring with this gospel music, and the cameras were in the dressing room before the fight. They were all in a wee circle, and they had this something preacher in this flipping pseudo cleric, like a JO-esque figure, and this boy doing this preaching and prayer before the fight.
Grant was like that, wasn't he? When he touched gloves with the opponent, he always said, "God bless you." He was that way inclined.
And Lennox was coming out to this menacing reggae music, the big blank stare on his face and all, and and the way he finished, it was just. But anyway, I always think back when I see a fighter coming out to like sort of that. That's sort of what Joyce.
Like fucking Sean Porter came out to that fucking gospel choir, and he had the WWE guy doing the preaching shit against Terrence Crawford, and Crawford comes out to LL Cool J, "I'm bad." Well, the lines, "Take a muscle-bound man and stick his face in the sand." Just came in there. We all knew how that was gonna fucking
like
end.
A use of Mac
Come on, what the fuck, man? It was ridiculous. Don't you I would want to come to the ring and intimidate a motherfucker, right? Or at least get myself pumped up.
Yeah, it's I always love again. Lennox used to come out to a few times when he was fighting Holyfield or Tyson. He came out to Bob Marley's Crazy Bald Heads, which was a great one. I'm going to chase these crazy bald heads out of town.
Oh yeah.
On just going back to Joyce. We were talking about I think it was Terry Woodfine, and we were having a good chat about it in the Nutters group about these. I think you may want to leave it there while I think he put it as a question about these hard gun trainers.
Do you want me to read it out now, because I do have it actually, and then you can address it, because I saw you boys talking about it, and let me see if I'm just sorry, Jim. Let me just get rid of you a second. Yeah, so Terry said, question for tonight's pod. This is the question Dominic was referring to. He said, when are these gun for hire trainers going to be outed in boxing? Ishmael Salas has now had 2 top tier British heavyweights, and both lost fights they were never expected to lose. Both then rematched those opponents, and then they were knocked out. How does this little 5-foot man train a heavyweight for starters? And let's be honest, do these gun for hire trainers have the best interests of the fighters at heart? I personally think they couldn't give a toss. Even though Terry's, I'm only reading this for the first time now properly, even though Terry's, what he's saying there kind of adds up with regards to the factual information. I'm not sure I would class Salas as maybe a gun for hire trainer as the way maybe Freddie Roach is now, Dominic. I'm not sure what angle you took on this.
Well, I was disagreeing with Terry. And again, someone who I would regard someone like a classic example of a hard gun for me would have been AJ's sort of short-lived dalliance with Robert Garcia before he hooked up with Derek James. To me, Robert Garcia was in the corner for the Usyk rematch, I think. Mm-hmm. And it looked like there was he wasn't having full authority. There was that other guy, Angel Fernandez, who was, and Garcia was content to allow another voice or another 2 voices to have AJ's ear. And he wasn't having, untrammeled authority to sort of impart the instructions that he felt needed to be imparted. That's the way it looked to me. But I don't think the thing was Terry's point was that if Salas had Joyce's best interest at heart, he would have sat him down and said, "There's no way you can win this rematch. We can't make the changes that need to be made, and there was 5 months between the first fight and the second fight." But my point was, we don't know for sure that Salas didn't genuinely think that Joyce could turn the tables. It's supposition to suggest that Salas didn't think that. There's plenty of respect. Dez was saying last week that Dez was thought Joyce could turn the tables, and there was many. Frampton thought he could turn the tables. There was plenty of people who thought that the result could be overturned. But the other point is, if Salas had my point was to Terry, if Salas had have said, "I'm not training you for this rematch," what's to say Joyce wouldn't have just, hired someone else? The bottom line being that it's the fighter who has the authority to ultimately to decide whether they're going to have the rematch, and as well as that, just lost my train of thought. It's the thing was, where was Joyce going to go if he didn't take the rematch? We said it. I think the guys were saying it after the first fight. What option, if Joyce's ambition was to win a world title, if he didn't exercise the rematch clause, what option did he have in terms of trying to get a world title?
Beating Zhang in that rematch was his sort of way back into winning that WBO interim thing back again, at least putting himself back in the position he was beforehand.
Because otherwise, he's like, who needs him? Like, he's not a big name. He's not a big.
He had to take it. Absolutely.
I think so, but I don't think. To me, Salas isn't the reason. I know he's a small guy, and he's. You say, how's he going to maybe do pods, whatever? But I just think Joyce's inability to slip a jab or get out of the way of punches. That's, to me, that's not. I don't care who's in his corner. You could have some sort of hybrid of the best trainer that's ever lived. You could design the best trainer, but Joyce's inability to get out of the way of punches. It's because of how slow he is on his feet fundamentally, and you even look the way how his upper body when he's pawing out the jab. It's very, very slow, and that's just genetics. That's just the way he's always been like that.
Well, here, Dominic, just before we go back to Matty, just to close out this particular segment, Frank was on the microphone afterwards. I don't know if you saw his stream, on your stream, his comments, but I thought Frank had an interesting spin on the fight. He was basically reducing the contest. This was interesting. He said Joe did what he was supposed to do for the first 2 rounds, and then he got caught with a great shot. That happens in boxing. I think that's a bit of a stretch of what actually went down on the night, I think, from Frank there.
I watched that late last night, Steve, after the card was over. I think that was he did an interview with formerly ID Boxing. I think that was the interview I watched, and he said that he was basically implying that everything was going smoothly until
he got caught with one. Yeah,
that's the exact words he said. It happens. He got caught with a shot. It's like, multiple shots is going in there. It's just pure. Do you know what? I was just thinking about this today, and I was trying to think: does he really believe that, or is he just saying that? Does he actually believe that Joyce was doing better than he had been doing in the first fight?
Well, sure, he said after the first fight, wasn't it, about the eye injury? He was alluding to the fact that Joyce was doing okay, and it would have carried on if it wasn't for the eye injury.
All I'm saying is, with that kind of level of media savvy and ability to not really be hurtful towards anyone, Frank make a fine politician. If Sunak doesn't work out, man, Warren for PM, right?
Well, I was just saying in another chat there a while ago, Matty, Kurt Ward, who used to come on the pod years ago, was very, very, very good at pointing out Frank's skullduggery and his bullshit. And because someone else was making the point, because Eddie is like, the arch villain, it sort of blinded people. The fact that Frank is equally capable of just some other. Just some crap, It's just like the way he's been talking about this, the Fury Usyk fight not happening this past few months has been breathtaking. He's a master at obfuscation and just talking around in circles. So he's I don't know what he was talking about with what he was watching. If he really believes that, if he really believes Joyce was doing well, the second round was someone said last night that if Zhang really wanted to, he could have, if he was really trying hard, he maybe could have got Joyce out of there even in the second round, because he was catching him not clean. But yeah, don't know what Frank's don't know what he was looking at.
Bullshit from Frank Alert. Hopefully we don't hear from that again. Terry Woodfine says Joyce couldn't get out of the way of an incoming train. So why the hell were the tactics fought at mid to long range with the 25 extra pounds so confusing? That's what I thought too. Bulk up, get inside, and he just stood on the outside exactly in range where Zhang loves to let the shots go. It was quite baffling, almost as if his brain wasn't able to contemplate it. Thomas Newman says he stopped circling to his left after about a minute into the second round and started squaring up his feet. Being 18 plus stone and not being able to move your head is not the best combo. Gabe will tell you all about that one as well. Matty, final word to you. Zhang was calling out Tyson
No, you can
Fury.
move your head just, towards the dinner plate.
The fork towards the head movement. Zhang was calling out Fury. He's got this WBO interim title. He's a character. Fury going to China to fight Zhang's not out of the realms of possibility. Fury's not going to fight a boxer this year. He wouldn't have thought by the end of October when he fights Ngannou. Is Fury Zhang a possibility now? Is it something that we could see down the line?
I wouldn't think that it's highly possible, but I wouldn't put it past him. I think it all probably depends on the number that's offered, and I don't know that would necessarily happen in China. But anywhere in the Middle East is a much quicker trek for the Chinese to go than it is for them to make it over to the UK. So I wouldn't doubt that maybe they look at that as a potentially big money making fight for someone in the Middle East to put on. If it does happen, that would probably be it. But I mean, it would have to happen soon. I mean, Zhang's 40 years old, but that said, I mean, he looks fucking really good for a 40-year-old.
Absolutely, yeah. He's just slightly younger than Wellington. Shout out to him. Can you post the link again, please? Yeah, absolutely. I can post the link, no problem. We'll throw it in there. Did you see? I take it, Matty, you were watching the ESPN version. Did you see anything in the undercard? It was a shit show altogether.
The only other thing they showed was Yarde. That's the only
Yeah.
other thing that was available on ESPN, and that was just a walkover fight. Silva coming in on late notice. He's older, experienced. Usually fairly durable, but wasn't able to manage at that time. So hopefully Yarde gets something more meaningful after that. But that's the only thing I was able to catch, unfortunately.
Well, most of the time, I think Yarde goes from complete rubbish up to meaningful. They've never had that middle ground with him, have they? They built him up. He gets his shot. He does pretty well. Gets beaten. Goes back down to this kind of level again. Do you think he needed someone who's going to take him for a few rounds, Matty? Or are you happy enough for the kind of 2-round blowout just to show everybody still has the power?
Nah, I don't think that was good enough. But I mean, to be fair, you look at the Lyndon Arthur fights. I guess those were kind of the middle ground fights for him, right?
Quite possibly, yeah. Absolutely. Dominic, a bit of rust shedding. They were saying for Yarde. I'm not really sure how much rust you'd shed after, was it, a round and a half?
Yes, again, I was just saying, I saw in the interview that Frank was talking about the Joyce fight. He was sort of saying Yarde needed that to shed the rust. But like, how does a round and a half against an opponent like that? How does that shed rust? Much less give him any benefit. It's just it's interesting. I was just thinking about if a Yarde fight against the winner of Boatsy Aziz, if that did get made for the early part of next year, would a favour Yarde to win? Obviously you have to wait and see what happens in the Boatsy Aziz fight, who wins and how impressively. But I can't see how going from fighting Beterbiev to fighting that level of opponent, I don't see how it does anything other than something negative for Yarde for his career. It's bad, but it's been the story of his career. It's just the way Frank, the way he's plotting it. But
yeah, thumbs down for that opponent from Dominic. Thumbs up for Des, who's jumped on the call with us here. Good evening, Des. You are very welcome as always. What's on your mind this Sunday evening, sir?
Hi, Steve. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you, lovely.
Well, thanks for having me. Hello to everyone. Can I go back a step to the Joe Joyce thing?
Certainly.
I know you covered that.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Don't you think the warning signs have always been there, and the red flag was the Joe Parker fight?
In what respect?
Well, Joe fights with his face. Joe's really easy to hit. And we've celebrated that, haven't we? We call him the Juggernaut because he just keeps walking forward. But I think we've all said this on the chat. The minute he comes across someone who's as big as him, as tough as him, someone that can punch a bit more than he can, he's going to come unstuck. And we all used to, be worried for him when they mentioned Joe Joyce and Deontay Wilder in the same sentence. I just think Zhang wasn't quite a Wilder, but he was a better version than Joe Parker. And Joe Parker, for me, if he could hit a bit more than what he can, he would have probably got to Joe Joyce that night. And that was the red flag for me. And me included, I never saw it coming.
So the warning signs were there, the blueprint was there.
Me, yeah.
We just hadn't got the puncher with the accuracy and the speed and the ability to get those shots in, and Zhang did all those things.
He just found his level, Joe Joyce. And look, I feel like an after-timer because I really thought Joe would win it last night. But by round 3, before Joe got off his stool, I said to a friend of mine, he can't win this fight. The way he's boxing, he looked shell-shocked. He looked like a shot fighter. And there is definitely something, there's a definite correlation between these GB big fellas and when they get caught out in the pros. Because I've seen it with Audley, I've seen it with Pricey, I've seen it to a degree with AJ, although it's been masked a little bit. And now I've seen it with Joe Joyce. You could even say we've seen it with Tony Yoka.
Yes.
These big fellas that do so well in the amateurs, that are having 10-year careers at these institutions of sport, at these elite levels, when they get caught out in the pros, there doesn't seem to be any coming back for them. And I genuinely don't think there's any way Joe Joyce can come back from this now, because the way he fights will be the way he spars. And he's been doing this for 15, 20 years. So I think all the fight's been punched out of him. And what we saw last night was a shell of a man that we used to celebrate and the style he used to fight. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, he said afterwards there's about carrying on. I think that's pride talking. It's hard to know in the aftermath of a contest like this. Do you think or hope that someone will maybe have a word in his ear? And he's an intelligent guy. He has things outside of boxing. He'll maybe just have a look and say, I don't really want to go back down to the levels of the other guys. I've worked my way up. It hasn't worked out. I may be knocking on the head. Or where do you think his thinking is going to be in that respect?
No, I think with heavyweight boxing, there's always so much money left on the table, and there's always opportunities. And if Derek Chisora doesn't prove to us that a guy that is a serial, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, it sounds terrible, but a serial loser like Derek in the last quarter of his career can keep getting opportunities and big opportunities against big names on pay-per-view shows. But if someone like Derek can get opportunities, Joe Joyce will have a few more opportunities on the table, and it'll always be for good money. And it's very hard to walk away from 6 figures in quite a high category of 6 figure, and that's where it will be for now. So I don't think Joe gets any better. I don't think Joe wins a world title, but I certainly think there's always going to be. It might be a Gerard Anderson. It might be a Dubois return. It might be a Dillian White. You never know with heavyweights. Who would have thought Derek Chisora would be fighting Alexander Usyk and Pulev and all these type of guys? There's always opportunities for heavyweights.
Yeah. I mean, there could be currency in him going over to fight Yoka if Yoka continues as a sort of proxy rematch almost. I mean, we see Wallin fighting Gassiev. What's to say a couple of fights down the line, Joyce doesn't start to get those kind of calls as well. As you said, there's with the big men, there's always money on the table, and there is, value in carrying going for that reason.
Yeah, definitely. He'll have money on the table and he'll have opportunities. But just the people around him, the people you're talking about blowing down his ear, they'll be in on that earner. So, it's a little bit of a juxtaposition here. It's like almost like we know you should go, and we agree with that sentiment. But at the same time, we're in the Joe Joyce business. So if you can earn half a million quid on the next one, and we're into 10% of that, well, you can find most people's pushing in that direction, can't you? You can see it happening.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything else catch your eye on the card, or anything around the sort of world of boxing last night, Des?
Wasn't much on, was there? I mean, Anthony Yarde, I don't get the Anthony Yarde thing. I just don't get the model they're running with him. I don't understand this constant knockover job and then throwing him in at the deep end. And don't get me wrong, he always acquits himself well, or he acquits himself. He done well against Beterbiev and he hung tough against Kovalev. But I don't understand the thinking behind it. But perhaps they've had a conversation with a promoter and he said, just keep him winning and I'll get him a big one. But for me, when I look at Yarde's record, it's very spurious. He's a 10-year pro. I've never seen him get off the floor. I've never seen him turn a fight around. I don't think he's got a world level win. I don't think he's got a top domestic win. All right, if you want to give him Lyndon Arthur, I won't argue. But if after 10 years, and if you're talking about one of the best light heavies in the world, I'd expect to see a bit more from him.
Just a final one for you as well, Des. I can't remember if we talked about this in one of the Nuthouse calls. Forgive me if we have in the past. But next week, obviously, big one, undisputed, September the 30th. Canelo going in against Jermell Charlo. What are your thoughts about Charlo moving up? Canelo comfortable at the weight? Are you expecting a stoppage, maybe? Charlo sort of superseding expectations? What are you looking at in that big one?
Well, I know a lot about Canelo, and I don't know an awful lot about Charlo, but I know Charlo's a good fighter, and I know Canelo's ready to go. And I don't know if it'd be this one or the next one, but I think the clock's ticking for Canelo. And I've always said this: the person that catches Canelo out, same as Chavez back in the day, it will be a real slick, aggressive American who can punch, who knows how to finish you if he gets you going. He'll know how to nick a few rounds. He'll know how to be crafty. And I think that kind of describes Charlo. He can fight when he wants to fight. He can punch a bit. He knows how to be crafty and go missing in a couple of rounds when he has to. I think it's a really hard fight for Canelo. I don't think the weight's an issue. I really don't. I think Charlo's big enough. I think I've got a funny feeling Charlo's going to catch him out.
Wow. So Charlo could be the man to finally catch up on him after all these years. I mean, he's had 60 plus fights. He turned pro, was it age 15, nearly 20 years ago? I mean, he's definitely on the slide.
Let me ask you this, Des. So all of these and some of these lines have moved, but all these fights, the underdog was paying around 3-1. Who do you think has the best chance of getting the upset this weekend? Lubin against Ramos, Barrios against Ugas, Wallin against Gassiev, or Charlo against Canelo?
Well, I think the biggest upset will probably be Charlo, and I think that's the one I'd go for. I think that's probably got the most value, isn't it?
He's paying 3-1 right now. So is Wallin. Lubin is closer to 3.5-1, and Barrios opened up around 3-1, but has moved closer. I actually think that's probably the best one, and I kind of agreed with that before the odds started moving. I just think that kind of spells a stylistic nightmare for Ugas, especially off of 18 months of inactivity.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think Ugas has always been a sort of fighter that I always measured him against his opponent's style. So, for example, I thought Pacquiao was the right fight for Ugas, but I didn't think Spence was. So I think stylistically, that's the wrong fight for Ugas, particularly on inactivity. You're quite right. Yeah, I couldn't argue with that, Matty. I think, as you say, Wallin is 3-1 to beat Gassiev.
He is.
That's massive odds because I think Wallin's a better fighter. I think Gassiev is an overindulged, entitled European who's been made to feel special for the last 10 years and is probably on autopilot now. So I mean, I'm going to lay on that because I fancy Wallin in that fight. I really do.
I do as well. A lot of people, Matty, are really fancying Gassiev for the knockout. I know it's social media. It's no real great barometer of brain cells, but a lot of people saying Gassiev KO, which surprises me.
It does for me a bit too, because I wouldn't be thinking that. Wallin is a big heavyweight. Gassiev, moving up from cruiserweight. I just feel like again, I think Wallin should, in all on the up and up, should win, but I think he's starting the fight 2 rounds down on the cards.
Yeah, possibly. But we talk about sliding door moments in life, in sport. I mean, another referee, another promotion on another night, Volin stops Tyson Fury.
He's the lineal champion. You're absolutely right.
Honestly, it's crazy. And Joe Joyce would have sat down and said, if I'd had that referee, if I'd had that type of sway, maybe I wouldn't have got stopped in my first one against Zhang, and maybe I'd have done enough to just ride it out. You know, the sliding door moments in boxing.
Yeah, it is. One that came to my mind just there finally, Des, you mentioned about the sort of aggressive fighter beating Canelo, getting into his face, stopping him. I honestly think that that's the reason why they didn't take the Bivol rematch, because I think Bivol would have gone one trick further and stopped Canelo this time and just put the rubber stamp on that first performance. I think he was the man to do that job that you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, Bivol was all wrong for Canelo, wasn't they? And did I don't know how you guys felt, but did you know after the first 3 or 4 rounds, this ain't going to be Canelo's night? He's really come unstuck. He's gone one too many against Bivol. Did you think that when you was watching it?
I was, but then I was thinking, let's get to 5, 6, 7, 8, because there was something in my mind saying, you know, everyone fancied Canelo so heavily, and surely he's going to start to come back. And as I've said many times before, Des, I have to level this accusation at Canelo. I believe he did mentally quit. I know quit's a very loaded word. I don't mean it necessarily in that way, but he mentally broke down those last 4 rounds, and instead of going for broke to try and knock Bivol out, he rode the fight out to go to the cards, hoping he would win it.
I think it goes to show that if Golovkin was, just a little bit taller and a little bit longer, he would have won those Canelo fights easily. I think the first one he probably did win. But it was just, you kind of take that style and give it into like a naturally bigger fighter who probably has better footwork than Golovkin, and it just wasn't going to be pretty.
No, your commentary wasn't pretty, Matty, because Des has had enough of us, so he's left. I think he's dropped off the call. Shout out to Des. Oh, he's back. You back with us, Des?
I'm here, mate. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, we just momentarily lost you there. Sorry, Matty. Do you want to just repeat what you were saying to Des there? Can you remember, Matty?
I think you basically caught it all. But before I finish there, I mean the ultimate thing is, I mean, basically, Bivol fights kind of like Golovkin with just a little bit better footwork. He's just a bigger guy and the same kind of stuff.
Can you hear me, Steve?
Yeah, go ahead,
Yeah, so I totally agree, man. And you preempted what I was going to ask you. I thought Kovalev with the red flag for Canelo that we saw get executed against Bivol. And I see similarities between Joe Joyce and Canelo in the sense that they've been boxing a very long time with a certain style. And I do think it catches up with you. And I think in Canelo's career, we've seen a few red flags, but they've got away with it. And I think Kovalev was the exact example of a red flag. And Bivol, he just put it to sleep. He executed it really well.
Yeah, well, and I think that like there was something to see in the Kovalev fight, and the problem is he just didn't have the motor to keep it up. Because going into that fight, I was thinking, I'm like, he's so much bigger. If he just keeps that jab working, he's going to win a decision. And I think he was winning on the cards through.
He was,
yeah. When I think something interesting to think about with Canelo and his size, etc. I mean, he's 5'8", maybe 5'9" on a good day. He's just really, really stout. I mean, we can get into steroid use and things like that, but he's an exceptional fighter because I believe that he's fighting a weight class too high. And I think one of the reasons he's fighting a weight class too high is he doesn't put in quite the work that he did at one point in time. And he is getting by on a little bit of talent right now. I know we're not quite to all the previews yet. I just don't know that Charlo has what it takes to do that, because I think about the troubles that Castano gave him, a guy with a similar stature, probably quicker than Canelo, but not nearly the puncher. And I just think, like, if Canelo just even has like an 80% good night, he should be able to stop Charlo, given what we saw with Castano's. Styles make fights.
Couldn't this be Charlo's coming out night?
When it comes to those Charlo brothers, I think their inactivity is what kills them at the end of the day. And I think whatever their best was, you probably aren't going to see it. I actually worry that Charlo's working with Roy Jones Jr. I think he's going to be thinking about things more than just going on instinct, whereas Canelo is with the Reynoso team, rinse, wash, repeat. So yeah, and maybe I'm biased because I really want to see Crawford challenge Canelo because I think he could do it. I think Crawford has a better chance than fucking Charlo. And he would make history doing that. But nonetheless,
is he working with Roy Jones, Molly?
Yeah, that's what I was just about to ask as well. I didn't know that. That's not. Yep. I don't like that.
He is. They were out fishing the other day. I saw a video on YouTube, and they were out fishing the other day, and Roy was teaching them how to properly reel up a big fish. You know, you gotta reel down to the water and then pull up and then reel down. There's a method to landing the big
Derek
one.
James is still head trainer, is that right?
Yeah,
and Joanne Guzman's in the corner as well. That's a lot of voices.
Sure,
that is.
There's a lot going on, man. There's a lot going on.
Because I saw Guzman in the first episode of the Showtime All Access. They were watching Canelo's fight against I don't know. They were watching one of Canelo's previous fights. I think they were watching the Canelo plant on the big screen, and Guzman was sitting beside him and talking to him about it. But I didn't know about Roy. I assume Derek James is still like overseeing, like is still the lead. They're working under James, I suppose.
Yeah, or maybe it was the other Charlo even. You could get him confused.
The other Charlo was with Ronnie Shields, wasn't he, at the time?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, it's who knows if he even fights this year. Remember my bold prediction at the end of last year that this year we will only see one fight that includes the name Charlo in it this year.
Flip me. It's hard to keep up with all this, isn't
it? And the WBC, standing with the other Charlo and his mental health issues, not stripping him. They don't want to do that to him, thinking maybe that's the straw that breaks the camel's back, and he goes jumping off a bridge or some shit. Jesus fuck.
Here, Matty, just before you go off on one completely, Michael Thompson says there having three trainers seems to work for Crawford. To be fair, just address that one, Matty, because I would suggest, and they're more low profile. You're bringing in Derek James and Roy Jones. It's like a higher level dynamic, if you get what I'm trying to say.
Well, Mac got to be working with Crawford on cardio. He's got to have a cardio guy.
He has one of those other trainers as a guy. Bo Mac can't really hold the pads for obvious, like he can't do a full rigorous pod workout.
He would be good for doing the body work though, and he wouldn't even need that whole fucking outfit. He'd just be there, just waylay him.
Is he still in jail, Bomac? Has anyone checked on him? Is he all right?
I assume he's still on remand waiting this court hearing, and they said it was sometime in October, didn't they? It's going to be
8th of October or something like that. I think it was.
I assume he's tell you what, our Uncle Porky he'll have gone up in Uncle Porky's estimation, being loitering in some clink at His Majesty's pleasure.
Imagine all the shit Bomac's gonna have to listen to. Oh, hey mate, quick, give us a bit of links, will you, mate? Fucking hell, man, poor Bomac. This is the biggest punishment for the fella ever.
All I could tell you is that I've watched a lot of those Jolly videos, and they go both ways on something. They've had like American kids trying British food and stuff like that, but it's mostly British people trying American things, and I'm so fucking sorry for any American who is stuck eating your fucking food for any given period of time, let alone the prison level of it. My God, we come from the land of flavor, and this is what you eat? Beans on fucking toast and fuck yeast extract? And why is everything on toast? What's the deal with toast?
I don't know, Matty, I can't answer that one. Do you remember when Terence...
Was you get Matty on the potato bread, Steve?
Oh, yeah. Bit of soda.
I take food very seriously. I love flavor and I love spice, God damn it, and heat.
Right, I think we've got off track somewhat here.
Back to the training team. Back to the training. Dom, you're making a point about the pads.
Right, go on then.
Yes. Bomac, the boys that work under Bomac, there's a guy, I think he's a Latino guy, a wee small guy. He's the chief, looks like the chief pod man. And the other guys, they're Bomac's just there as a sort of, he's the main voice in the corner in between rounds. But it's more organic. It's more sort of the dynamic in the Bomac camp, it's every man looks to have their role and to know their role. Whereas when you get big high profile names like Guzman, like Roy Jones, coming in on top of Derek James, it's more of a too many cooks sort of scenario that you're looking at, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Steve, can I say something about that, please?
Of course you can. Yes.
I think it's quite a nuance. There's nuance to this subject because over in the UK, let's just say you pick an area like Manchester, you might have 5 or 6 different gyms. So you've got Pat Barrett in one gym, and you've got Jamie Moore in another gym, and you've got Joe Gallagher in another gym, Michael Jennings in another one. They're all in like a square 3 or 4 mile of each other. And what you're doing, you're dividing all the intellectual capital. I've always thought, why don't you get all that intellectual capital under one roof? Now, boxing trainers are quite insecure people. So they like to keep their fighters to themselves, and they don't like their fighters to interact with other trainers. And they don't even like other trainers making points or having anything to say about their kid. But could you imagine if you had no insecurities and you said, look, let's get 4 or 5 top-class trainers under one roof, and let's all get our fighters in here, and let's all bounce off each other, and let's pick up ideas from each other and the experiences we've all had. Now, did we say Charlo had 3 trainers at the moment?
Yes, we believe so.
Right. Now, could you imagine if he's brought them all in and in context said, look, guys, you're not here to overrule anybody. That's the head trainer. He's going to lay out what he wants you to do every day. My program is in place. Can you slot into it? Could you imagine Can you imagine the advice you could be receiving? And could you imagine the knowledge you could be getting from them individual brilliant fighters and brilliant trainers leading up to the biggest fight of his life? So we've never really seen it work in this country. But if you go out to, say, the Mayweather Boxing Club, guys like Boza Edwards and Eddie Mustafa Mohammed, Eddie Mustafa's potentially a Hall of Fame fighter who's trained world champions, and Boza Edwards has forgotten more than most people know. These guys just sitting around giving advice. If they walked into any gym in the UK, they'd have seniority. But over there, you've got 5 or 6 of them all in one gym, just offering advice, showing how to do your hands, showing how to prepare for a fight, showing the type of fluid you should be taking, little things. It's so nuanced. But if you get that right, I think it can be a positive.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, no, all good points, all good points. And of course, as well, Des, you mentioned Michael Jennings there. I think he was one of the fighters who came under Brian Hughes as well. I think he has passed away now, but he would have been in that sort of geographical region as well at the time, imparting knowledge down to the next generation.
Absolutely. It's a hotbed, but you could say the same for London. If you drive from, say, one part of East London to one part of North London, you might pass 6 or 7 gyms, and you think, all you guys are out on your own. But what are you learning doing that? But I understand why it's done, and I understand people want their own thing, and I understand people a little bit insecure, and fighters with other trainers has always been an issue. But if you could get everybody under one roof, now, didn't Kenny Porter bring in, who's my favourite trainer from Washington DC that had the
Barry
the 2
Hunter.
brothers? He brought Barry Hunter in. You know, I mean, didn't Adam Booth send David Hay to see Ismail Salas in the early stages of his career?
That's right,
I think that shows a brilliant sign of security. Like, I'm good at my job, but I want to bring someone else in to help me with it. I mean, if I was a fighter and my trainer done that, I'd be enamored with that type of move.
Mm-hmm. You know, one other example that I think is a sort of similar example. If you watch back to Holyfield around the time that he was fighting, like say the first fight with Riddick Bowe, and you've got Lou Duva is sort of looking straight in between rounds in the corner. Lou Duva is talking to him face on, but Georgie Benton is sort of talking into his left ear, and you know Georgie Benton is dispensing the main sort of tactical, strategic advice. And then you've got Lou Duva, who just knows that his role is not to do that, but to give him that sort of last bit of motivational G up before he stands up off the stool to go out. The dynamic there was sort of very, it was sort of very, you know, they got it all sort of.
Well, everyone knows their roles, Dominic. Or, you know, you don't end up in the situation when Nazim did, wasn't it? Do you remember when he had Oscar Suarez
And Steve, whenever you speak to a Brit about this type of subject, we always go back to Oscar Suarez and Manny Stewart with Naz.
Yeah.
But Naz was beyond help then. You know, Naz was a train wreck. And if you spoke to Manny Stewart, and I think people have, I think he said it was bonkers, but the money was good, and we do what we do as trainers.
Manny loved Nazim. He was like in awe of him as a fighter, and he was sort of devastated. I think that he was just, there was a sadness in him that Naz, as you say, that he was beyond the point of being.
Yeah.
And it was a real shame. It was a shame that Naz didn't get to work with him, you know, when he was still at his apex. But it's one of those things.
And having two minds didn't hurt Marvin Hagler, did it, with the Petronelli brothers? It can work. It can work. But I think over here we're a little bit indoctrinated into thinking it can't work. But I think if you go to other parts of the world, and if you look back over the last 25, 30 years, 2 or 3 brilliant minds in a gym hasn't hurt fighters.
I think in more recent times, we're more inclined to look at the example of AJ in that first Usyk fight, and you had those 2 guys outside the ring who were sort of shouting in those sort of motivational shouts. But during the rounds, brilliant AJ. You know, when he was losing the rounds, and in the corner, you know, it didn't look like AJ was, you know, he wasn't buying McCracken's instructions in between rounds. Maybe McCracken was speaking, but AJ was sort of looking out to these 2 other guys, Fernandez and the other guy, I can't remember his name. Who were
and wasn't AJ a picture of instability at that time?
Yeah, that's the example of, I suppose that's the example of it not working when each man, the 2 or 3 voices don't know what their role is.
No wonder AJ's got voices in his head. He's got all literally these voices in his head. Poor fella. Right, just to remind our listeners in case they have forgotten, this is episode 541. We've got Dominic on the call, Matt is here, Des is here as well, alongside me, Steve. Des, I know I'll keep firing final questions to you. I promise this will be the last one. I do respect your time. Conor Benn returned last night in Florida. I don't know if you saw it. If you did, what did you make of it and the whole kind of circus show that's surrounding this return?
I never see it, Steve. And it is a circus, and I don't know where I am with it anymore. Can I come off the fight and just talk about some of the legalities preceding all of this? And
of course you can, yes.
Some of the guys can tell me about how he performed. But I'm now of the thinking, if you've got a 270-page docket that exonerates you, let's see it. Publish it, please.
Yeah.
Stick it on the Boxing News. Stick it on Twitter. Stick it on in the Times. Do whatever you've got to do, but let's see it. If you've got scientific and medical evidence that exonerates you, please disclose it. But I'm sick and tired with this whole issue of the drugged-in sport, where we're all a little bit too thick or too dim to understand what's going on, and no one's allowed to talk about it. And the whole subject is, you know, hermetically sealed in some sort of bag, and it's for a few people to know about, but we can't know about it. And if Conor Benn is innocent, and please God he is, if he is innocent, well, why would you put the kid through this type of torment, and why would you run him through the mill like this? If he's innocent, let's see it, prove it. And if we're talking about Conor Benn, let's talk about Dillian White's B sample from the Rivas fight. Let's talk about Dillian White, who just popped against the AJ fight. Let's talk about Hellenius. Let's talk about Baumgardner. Why is everything so secret? Why is it all, you know, as boxing fans, we have got a right to know. And I'm sitting here thinking, I'm desperate not to hang people out to dry. But what are we to think? Anyway, look, that's the drugs thing out of the way. In terms of him being back, am I glad he's back? Well, I don't want to see anyone struggling. I don't want to see anyone being told they can't work. I can imagine he's under a mountain of debt through all the stuff they've just gone through. So part of me is, yeah, I'm glad the kid's back. But it's not satisfactory. It's not how I'd want it. And it's not how I'd want him to push his career on under this cloud.
Matty, Michael Thompson saying there as if they wouldn't be screaming the proof on the rooftops if they had it. Absolutely. As Des says there, why are they treating us with such contempt? This whole, it's all science in, it's not for you lot out there to know. We know all about it. Why is this, Matty? What are they trying to keep from us?
The truth?
It's in the document, man. 270 pages.
At this point in time, there just comes a time when people eventually become exhausted by a story, right? And they just want it to be done with. And once the public has reached that point of exhaustion, the narrative doesn't even matter anymore. And I think we've gotten there. It's been such a big deal for so long. Been on your bigger news, some bigger news programs and discussion shows over there. And I think people have just kind of, they've had it up to here with Conor Benn. Say ship him over here for a night, and knowing that no one's going to give a fuck in another few months, and they're just done with it.
Mm-hmm. Well, Dominic, just a nicely segueing, as I tend to do, into another issue that arose this week. Eddie is going to be positively reveling in one thing anyway. The Channel 5 documentary that came out.
Eddie is positive, and I got excited for a second. Damn it.
British Boxing Border Control, Jeff Hines, referee, Ian John Lewis. A very good referee, Jeff Hines, actually, by the way. Ian John Lewis, not so good referee. And this lady, Begum, I think you call her, maybe a sort of middling pro, maybe 1 win, 2 losses, something like that. I don't know if you've seen the documentary, Dominic. I don't even know if it's even aired yet. I certainly haven't seen it anyway. But what do you think about these accusations that came out this week?
Well, I just saw it was actually I don't know if there's a separate documentary, but there was a package on the Channel 4 News at 7:00 on Friday night, and I think Ricky Graville put it in the chat about an hour before, and that's the only reason I knew about it. So I turned the news on, and I watched. I didn't get the start of it, but I got about the last 10 minutes.
Oh, so it was more of a wee vignette rather than actual documentary itself. Then sorry,
yeah,
I didn't.
But it was the lead. It was the lead item on the news bulletin. It was the first item on the at the 7:00 news started, because I got there about 7:05. They were clearly, it was the first item. Now I didn't hear the woman Begum. I think her story was that she had lost 2 of her first 3 fights or something, and that the board had refused the license her or something. But I'm not sure what her story was. But Ian John Lewis and Jeff, I thought, I said to someone else, I thought Jeff Hines, I thought his testimony was the most compelling. Because I, like you, think that anytime I saw him, I thought he was a good referee. And his story, his accusation was that he had never been elevated to that A-star referee class, which would enable you to referee title fights. And Ian John Lewis was sort of saying that when he was the first black referee 20 odd years ago, he thought that he would be like the first of many, and that it hadn't turned out that way. But
he should have done a better job then.
Exactly. Well, I was actually saying to someone else who can't watch boxing, who just can't get watching the boxing these days, and older guy, and he was I was telling him about this, and just telling him that Ian John Lewis, I was trying to explain to him that I was seeing him, he was guilty of having either stopped fights too soon or stopped fights too late. And he looked to me like, when you're a referee and you're seeing big shots meted out at such close quarters, if you get disturbed by that, which I felt Ian John Lewis on a few occasions, I felt he got very rattled by witnessing big shots landing at such close quarters. And if you can't keep your composure in the face of that, you're in the wrong job. And I'm convinced that he got somehow rattled whenever he's that sort of, he was in that sort of situation. But
which, Dominic, is surprising on 2 cases, because number one, he was the referee whenever Shannon Briggs took an absolute rattling by Vitaly Klitschko, and he let it go on for 12 rounds. And also, he was an exciting sort of face forward pro himself back in the day.
Maybe the Shannon Briggs, maybe that sort of experience, maybe that, I'm just sort of throwing out a theory here, maybe that sort of scarred him or sort of, made him sort of allergic to ever allowing a fight like that to happen, or to ref a fight the same way that he reffed the Briggs Klitschko fight. The board are the board are the case is going through the courts at the minute apparently, and the board are strenuously denying all the allegations. But I was saying to one of the other guys in the chat, I would be very suspicious of the timing of these allegations being made public. Well, it's been known before this item on the news the other night that Ian John Lewis was in a legal battle with the board, and that was going through the courts. But for it to come out in this sort of public fashion at this time when the board are engaged in a high profile sort of legal wrangle with Conor Benn, I would be suspicious of the timing. Because it seems like one of the first occasions when a lot of people seem to be agreed that Robert Smith is actually trying to do the right thing over the Conor Benn situation. He's trying to do what's within the board's power, even though there's always these whispers that the board have to be very careful, given their financial situation. They have to be careful about inviting legal action against them because it could end up, the same what happened with the Michael Watson situation. They have to be very careful about exposing themselves to an action that could force them to wind up. So I think I would be very, very suspicious of the timing. You've got Eddie who's come out and been commenting on it the last day or two, saying they're very serious allegations and this could be the end of the board. And
Ian John Lewis is in with Bieber as well now, who obviously see themselves as a rival to the board. The board aren't perfect; they have their faults, Dominic. But what's the alternative like? I mean,
who's this Bieber crowd?
British and Irish Boxing Association. They were born out of the Maltese Boxing Association.
And how old are they?
About 6-7 years in this iteration, but like I said, they were previously the Maltese Boxing Organisation. They tried to put on the Nigel Benn Sakio Bika fight in Birmingham, if you recall, about 18 months, 2 years ago, something like that. That fell through, and they kind of give a home to fighters who've maybe been refused licenses by the board, and they have like head scanners and stuff. They do a lot of good things, don't get me wrong, but they haven't obviously got the pool of talent that the British Boxing Board do.
It's interesting, like the I was reading something the other day in the context of this Florida and Texas commissions and I actually didn't understand. Apparently, Conor Benn, even though that fight was in Florida last night, it wasn't the Florida commission; it was the Texas commission that licensed him. But the fight was in Florida. I don't know how that works. So he's got a Texas license, but the fight was in Florida.
It might have been at the Seminole. Was it at the casino? Because if it was at the casino, then that would actually fall under tribal jurisdiction, so they could accept whatever fucking license they want.
Well, who knows, Matty? Because not wanting to go into Bellew of the Week territory, but we had pictures of it didn't look like much of a casino to me. There, it looks more like the local bingo hall or something. So there we are. That was where it was taking place there on the screen for anybody who can see that.
But
go ahead, Dominic.
One thing on the board that. These commissions, like I think Matty was actually saying this during the week, that like the likes of the state athletic commissions in America, they are ultimately answerable to the state governments or the state legislatures, whereas the British Boxing Board of Control is a non-statutory body. It's not a public body. It's not ultimately like the FA, which is answerable to the DCMS, the Department of Culture, Media and Sport. So the board is set up by itself, and therefore it's basically reliant on the promoters, the big sort of stakeholders like who are putting on the shows, and isn't that where the board's revenue comes from? They take
recognizing and financing them, yeah.
So basically, the board can't. There's always going to be, because it's a non-statutory body. They have to be very careful about how they regulate the sport in relation to not upsetting the big promoters. But I think, Smith, for all his faults, I'm not saying he's perfect, he's trying to do the right thing over the Conor Benn situation. And the thing that really annoys me is that you've got Eddie and Ben. I don't know if anyone else noticed, but a constant line of complaint that they've had over this whole saga has been that the board and Robert Smith have breached what is supposed to be a confidential process, that they're coming out and Eddie's complaining that Robert Smith's going on TalkSport. But yet every other week, every interview Eddie gives, they're talking about the Benn situation. they're hardly adhering to a confidential process. If they were adhering to the fact of it being a confidential process, Eddie would be telling these interviewers, "I'm not answering questions on Conor Benn." So he's very content to talk about it, but yet Robert Smith somehow isn't. Robert Smith isn't allowed to come out and Robert Smith is. It's hardly as if Robert Smith is coming out with anywhere near the same frequency that Eddie is talking about this or Ben. Robert Smith is, has been, I would say, quite restrained in any public pronouncements he's made about this. And the other thing I would just say in closing is it's sort of been swept under the carpet in the whole swirl and vortex of obfuscation. But in this last week, it seems that it's come full circle, and Conor Benn and Eddie are now saying it was the eggs after all. But if you remember when Suleiman threw them that defence in the beginning, and said the WBC said that it was likely, the eggs, Eddie and Ben were quite vexed when that happened. They said, no, that's not the basis of our defence. They were basically alleging irregularities in VADA's testing procedures. But now it's come full circle again, and it is the eggs. And so no one sort of, I haven't seen Ben in any of these, or Eddie, I haven't seen any of these interviewers ask him why has there been this constant flip-flopping back and forth between what is the actual basis of the explanation. It's eggs, and then it's the testing, and then it's back to the eggs. None of which inclines me to have any sort of belief that Ben might be innocent.
Yeah, I wondered how they would deal with it. In the press release, as anyone who's watching at home can see on the screen, it says Ben was provisionally suspended back in April, effective as of March the 15th, when his fight with Chris Eubank Jr. last October was postponed. The Destroyer, however, was subsequently cleared in July by UKAD and the WBC, and his provisional suspension was lifted after an independent national anti-doping panel review. So that's the way they were dealing with it.
The other thing is, like, I wish one of these interviewers would say to Eddie, why do you keep coming out with this line that the WBC cleared him? Whether the WBC is a sanctioning body, they don't have the jurisdictional authority to clear a fighter to fight. They're just a business enterprise. These sanctioning bodies. Like Matty was saying earlier about the fact that they've let Jermell Charlo hold on to that belt without fighting anyone. They're not reputable organizations. They can't use. So Eddie can't. I wish someone would just say, why do you keep referencing the WBC? And again, another thing is, it seems to have been the initial suspension that was lifted back in the summer. That has the word is that's been done on jurisdictional grounds, on the grounds that it was a VADA test, and that the board can't, because the board, that was how Ben got off, because the board recognised UKAD as opposed to VADA, that it was a jurisdictional loophole that got Ben off. But yet they're still coming out and saying about the eggs. So why are you talking about eggs if it was a jurisdictional issue that got you off? So there's the inconsistencies are just glaring. And I have to say, I know he got instinct, but I think he did probably cheat. Like I think he probably was. I think he probably was juicing.
That's a bit controversial, Dominic. Are you sure?
It is.
He doesn't look as defined in his build anymore, does he? I mean, am I missing something? I just thought, I'm like, man, he seemed more ripped before his layoff.
And even look at but he was, what was that fight out last night? Light middleweight, it was 154 pounds. I mean, so the guys were saying, we were talking about this earlier, he's not a light middleweight. I would even say he's too small for a lot of the guys at welterweight, in my opinion. I mean, if you can imagine him, those guys like Stanionis or Butayev, those guys I think would
would have enough. Yeah, he came in half a pound under. Go ahead, Des.
Just in terms of pure physical size alone, I think he wouldn't be able to match those guys. So the sort of the funny thing about it is, at the end of the day, I don't mean to sound nasty, but he's just not very good. If you look at his ability, people are talking about these wins he had against Chris Algieri and Van Heerden, both of whom were well past their best. He's fundamentally, he's not. Frotch was saying this last. Frotch was again as on many things these days. Frotch was very good on this on TalkSport last night, before the Zhang Joyce fight. He was saying, it was sort of very subtle the way Frotch did it. Actually, Yarde was sort of saying, before this whole saga started, Conor Benn was on course to be he was one of the biggest stars in British boxing, and Frotch just cut him off and said, "Yeah, he was one of the biggest prospects. I'll agree with you there." he was sort of very subtly, pointing out that he hadn't even won an area title or a British title, or European. He hadn't done anything really to warrant the sort of star treatment he was getting. So it's a bit of a mess.
Thomas Newman says, I think Conor Benn will be beaten before we see the 270-page Juggernaut tale. They might release it as an audio book. I'll not be reading it though. My voice is on Skid Row now, but we'll carry on. Des, there was one thing I was just going to quickly pick up with yourself, if you care to discuss this with us. Just going back to the Channel 4 thing to close the loop on that, and Dominic mentioned Jeff Hines, and I don't know what you're thinking on Jeff Hines' case, but I do actually think that there is maybe some truth in this. It's definitely something that needs looking into, because you could not really see any great rationale for him maybe not being upgraded to that A-star referee level when some of the other guys who seem to be in a similar ability level were elevated to that position. So maybe Jeff has a case or not, Des. I'm not sure where you stand on that one.
Well, look, do you agree, just from a base point, do you agree that let's say Afro-Caribbean community that have settled in Britain, they've played a monumental part in the history of British boxing over the last 60 years. Would you agree on that?
Yes, I would agree on that.
Yeah, absolutely. But would you say non-white footballers have played a monumental part in English football over the last 50 years?
Yes.
Now, across both sports, we don't see enough black trainers. We don't see enough black promoters. We don't see enough black managers. And we probably haven't got any black people on the board at the British Boxing Board of Control. I don't know. I'm just surmising. And it's the same in football. We don't see enough black coaches. We don't see enough black managers. We don't see enough black directors. We just don't. So it's an easy thing to throw. And if you're a black person standing in front of perhaps a 10 men all white panel, you're thinking, where's my representation? And where's the representation that's done this sport so proud over the last 60, 70 years? That said, and I've always been the same, if someone throws an accusation like this at you, attack is the best form of defence. And if I was the British Boxing Board of Control, I'd open my doors, I'd allow anyone to look at my files, and I'd say, we welcome an independent investigation. I'd bring an independent arbitrator in, I'd say, investigate us thoroughly, because racism has got no place in boxing. It's got no place in society, but particularly boxing, where, like I said, Afro-Caribbean people have played a monumental part in it. So if the board, rather than go to ground, rather than keep their head down and hope this goes away, they should stand up and say, no, we welcome the investigation. Open their doors to it, bring in independent arbitrators and open their files to it. And if there is anything in there that's racist, root it out. But the ball should lead from the front on this one.
Yeah, I think a fair point that you made there, without making it specifically, is the fact that if all of the people who are in your organization are Caucasian, even if you aren't racist, you're not given the great appearance of it. It reminds me, there's this video floating around as an ad on YouTube from PragerU, and it's a right wing ad, but saying making the stand that America's racist, that that we're not a racist nation. Well, the guy making the presentation is white. If you're the optics, you got to be aware of the optics of these things.
Correct.
And if you don't have a person of color that you can at least lean on to be your token to kind of take you through, lead you through this situation, then maybe you do have a problem with diversity in your organization.
And I think that's the key word, diversity. Perhaps diversity is a better word than racism, but we don't have enough diversity. I don't want tokenism either.
Well, yeah,
I can't stand tokenism. I just want, like you said there, sorry, Matty, to cut across you, mate. Diversity is the better word. We probably don't have enough diversity. And I suppose if you follow the chain down, there's probably not enough black people doing courses to get into coaching, or I don't know, there's probably not enough black people applying for licenses to get on the board. But we have to change that. But we
see, and then they
Gotta
cut
do
him off.
something. Gotta do something,
it's just,
Matty.
yeah,
That's dark forces at work.
I hate that Des got cut off there because he was making a good point. And it's not just the the Des is back. It's not just that you have the Afro-Caribbean fighters. You also now have Central African fighters, and then you have Pakistani fighters. You have fighters. Was Naz Yemeni descent? All over. So you have this very, very diverse country, and I know, and we don't want to go too far in this, but Brexit and everything reflects it. People have a hard time kind of opening up the doors fully to everybody in society. But you know what? What you really want to say, if you want to have a strong country, you want to have a strong organization, you want to have a strong sport, is that we are here to represent the people, their best interest, period. We're all British, we're all boxers, we're all here for the best of the sport.
But I think can you hear me, Matty?
Yes, sir.
I think you made that's the phrase. Perhaps racism is too strong a word, and it carries an awful connotation. And perhaps people at Boxing Board of Control say we're not racist, but do we see enough diversity in it? And do we see enough diversity across the board? And if you ask them specifically, they'll probably say, no, we don't have enough diversity here. And maybe that could change. But again, we want to change without tokenism, and we want to change without positive discrimination. We want people of value to be there. And there must be enough Afro-Caribbean members to add value to the board.
Yeah, there's got to be a retired fighter who would be willing to step in, and because they love the sport and they see some places it wants to get fixed, and then you can't really argue against the experience aspect. They just bring a different type of experience, a different vision to the organization.
But the problem we have here, Matty, is we've been a little bit naive, because you know as well as I do that all these things become little boys' clubs, and you're only going to bring your mates in.
That's
and
everything.
That's
Nepotism is, it's everywhere. It's everywhere.
What to me in this discussion, I think what really should be flagged up is there's so many referees in the British scene, at least. I'm thinking of the likes of Terry O'Connor, who seem to still be given gigs to ref big fights, and they should have been put out to pasture long ago. And I would like to see, I think it's been mentioned before, but I would like to see ex-fighters, involved in some level of either judging or reffing. I would really like to see, I think that's a broader issue, in terms just the quality of the referees, of the judges. I would like to see something done about that there. I would like to know what is the method by which performance of referees is sort of is examined, is tested. I would like to see something better in that regard, because too many of the same referees, and even we saw Lawrence Cole last week. I mentioned last week, that there doesn't seem to be any accountability for bad performances.
Yeah, I think just to close out this discussion before we move on and tidy up the rest of the weekend, boys, MB mentions that there. That's a tricky one, because if a fighter once boxed that promoter, he could be biased. I know in football they've had that issue in the past trying to get referees, haven't they? And guys who played for like 11 or 12 clubs, they're saying they can't referee any these particular matches involved. I know Kevin McIntyre, former British champion, is doing a lot of refereeing up in Scotland at the moment. Seems to be doing a pretty decent job.
Yeah, I'll just say it as quick as I can. If you had enough fighters, there would be enough that if a fighter was, had a link with a promoter from the past, you could get someone else. If you had enough fighters, enough former fighters, I know it's difficult because there's only maybe 2 or 3 big promoters, but I think there should be a way of getting someone who could be neutral, and who had fought before the ref, or even to or even to sort of get in to speak to referees about,
particular incidents or something, maybe.
Yeah, like how to maybe allowing a bit more on the inside, not just breaking up the action as soon as two guys sort of.
Or you did this, maybe I would have done X, Y, and Z in that situation, and lending on their experience. It's a good point. It's a good point. Right, boys, talking of good points, Thomas Smith has thrown one into the Gmail this week. I'll read this out for him because he does contribute from time to time. He says, I was saying coming into this fight, he's talking about Usyk Dubois, by the way, that the best result for boxing would have been a Usyk win. But now I think the best result would have been a fair one. The ref was meant to give the fight to Usyk and did well to keep him from too much harm. The low blow was debatable, though I thought it was legal. But the ones that followed, which clearly hurt Usyk and gave the ref cause to pause proceedings, however briefly, were fine. Dubois was fighting the ref as well this evening. Awful officiating. So that was sent to me about a week ago from Thomas. And I'm just catching up on it now, Thomas. Sorry about the delay for that one. We got there in the end. Talking of getting there in the end, Matty, there was a few points of action over the weekend. And if I touch upon anything, we had Hitchens against Zepeda, McCaskill, Sandy Ryan. There was a bit of pro box, and we were talking Japanese action off air. You can touch upon anything or nothing that you wish there, sir.
All right, Zepeda versus Hitchens. I kind of came into the fight thinking that Zepeda just might have been shot. I mean, we saw him, and it kind of looked like he was on his last legs against Prograis, and then he just couldn't seem to pull the trigger and make the action in that small ring against that jerk-off Indian guy that you remember a while back. And he just didn't have it. He didn't have his legs anymore. He didn't have his timing. And Hitchens just took an easy route, working mostly behind his jab, flashing little bits of other skills too. You feel like he might have been able to work his way to a stoppage there if he had just stepped on the gas, given that Zepeda's done. But he just cruised to a wide decision, shut out on a couple of cards, I think. He seems to fight like the Haitian Lara. Could see him as a tight list, can't see him as a crowd favorite. Conor Benn, obviously on that card, looked pedestrian against a much bigger fighter. I got to give it to Orozco for sticking in there. Actually, a fairly entertaining fight at the end of the day. Both guys landed some shots. Kind of enjoyed the watch on that one. Austin Ammo Williams looking a little not as great as we might have thought against Steve Rolls. We might be starting to see his level come into play. Came out with a decision victory on that one. And then the pretty good fight was McCaskill versus Ryan. Both gals landed some really good shots in there. And I know a lot of people thought that Ryan got robbed, but I thought that the commentary was quite biased towards Ryan. I saw McCaskill landing a lot of short right hands as she was coming in that I rarely heard the comment crew even reference. The fight ended up being a draw. They thought it was very controversial. I thought that was right kind of in the ballpark with maybe a lean towards Ryan. I did not bet it, sadly, but I was the first person ever, Steve, to correctly predict a draw in the Boxing Nutters Prediction League. So might not win the season, but I will go down in history. So I got that going for me, which is nice. But yeah, I actually thought that was a fairly entertaining fight. Joe Kennedy and I will get deeper into that one on a new episode of Chicks with Dig that will be on Wednesday. Probably too late for you UK cats, but you'll be able to catch that one in the normal places in the coming days afterwards. And then I kind of thought that the most entertaining stuff happened almost a week ago at this point in time with the card from Japan, where we saw Junto Nakatani take a 12-round decision, dropping RG Cortez 3 times, getting hurt pretty good himself in the 6th round in Cortez, a durable fighter, gave Estrada all sorts of hell, but Nakatani, won that one pretty easily at the end of the day, despite the fact that Cortez was able to see his way to the distance. Still looking forward to what he might do at 115 pounds. Nakatani, a really fun fighter. But we shall see what his next step is. I think the most interesting fight I've heard of is Ioka against Estrada, potentially on New Year's.
Yes.
So that could be a blast and a half. But the fight of the card, I would have to say, was our boy Kenshiro Teraji against former titleist Hecky Butler, in what was a very entertaining and a fairly close affair, I thought, through maybe 5-6 rounds before Teraji really started turning it up. Butler refusing really to go down, though, until finally Teraji just decided to turn it up and the ref stepped in. He has that kind of uncanny ability to to step on it and get the job done when needed and just finish it as he so chooses, it seems. But that was a good fight. Butler still has a lot of heart. Both guys landing hard shots, going to the body on both ends. But Tarache is still one of the most entertaining fighters around. I think he definitely should be in arguments in the pound-for-pound top 10 for people. And looking forward to see what this 108-pound tight list will do next.
Good stuff, Matty. Thank you very much for that. Yeah, I would echo most of Matty's sentiments there. I thought Ken Shiro looked really, really good. He's definitely bounced back from that loss, crushing the guy in his next fight. Also, Richardson Hitchens as well. MB mentioning there, I like this fight on paper, but Hitchens just moved all night. This is the problem I said before the PBC had with him as well. He had Malik Hawkins, I'm pretty sure it was Hawkins, on the hook all night and just could not finish him off, or would not actually. He's a real great value on Twitter, is Hitchens, but in the ring, he just seems to me like he's a couple of punches on the end of that combination away from becoming a superstar, and people laugh and go, what? I think he's genuinely that talented, but this negativity, this boxing within himself against John Bowser before, he could have stopped Bowser. No way that fight should have gone the distance. Last night, Zepeda was there for the taking. If you're going to become a star, put the foot down. Don't go to late stage Mayweather. Go to the early stage Mayweather, the pretty boy stage. Bang them out, for fuck's sake, man. Hitchens has all the talent in the world to become a star, but as much as Eddie can, say the bits and pieces behind the scenes, the press releases and that, if you're not going to put the punches together and get people off their seats, all 300 of them in the arena last night, then Hitchens isn't going to become a star at all. But he has the talent, he has the ability and the athleticism to do that. So, yeah.
It's a mental thing, Steve, isn't it? It's a mental thing. He's got to get over it.
I think that's what it is.
Yeah. And it's become fashionable as well. In the last 10 years, we've seen it. Trainers have really emphasised that. Box smart, don't box hard, and and I've seen this with Hitchens a few times. It's a mental thing, and you're quite right. The previous fight, shouldn't have gone the distance, and nor should last night either.
Yeah, need to let the shots go. Thomas Newman says Eddie seemed to be a little bit pissed off with Hitchens. Yep, no doubt he'll be like Andre. Yes,
Steve, can I just pick up on Matty's summary?
Absolutely,
I agree with him, and I agree with him. I thought Sandy Ryan nicked it, but it weren't a robbery. It wasn't, I thought she should have won it, but there was an awful lot of punches that McCaskill was landing and wasn't being called on, and they wasn't calling him in the commentary. And I thought this might be closer than you think. And I thought Sandy Ryan should win it, but it wasn't a robbery.
Yeah. I did watch that fight as well earlier on, actually, but I had it on like 1.5 speed.
And don't get me wrong, Ryan would have won that fight 95 times out of 100 in the UK.
Correct. Yeah,
she would have.
It wasn't a scream up. It wasn't a robbery, was it?
Nope. It was just. It was kind of. I wouldn't not in entertainment value or skill level value, but it was kind of like Serrano versus Taylor. Where it's just Amanda might have done more hurting in there, but round by round, go either way.
But Matty, we've had these debates before. It's very subjective boxing and what's scoring a boxing match, and two people sitting next to each other can see it differently. And there's quite a few instances that we've had over the last year where one person said, no, he's a definite winner, but someone might come across and say, well, do you know what? I could see how he just nicks it. And it's the little things, it's the details, and it's all about how the judges see it.
I really think the one thing that we don't give enough consideration to when it comes to judging is that we are dealing with multiple camera angles, and whether we admit it or not, if we see a replay and they're like, oh shit, that landed, we will adjust our round scoring on the fly, even if we don't admit it, right? The judges don't have that ability, and their viewing position is static.
That's a good point, yeah. Andy will be turning in his grave, but I think judging, officiating, refereeing it's a difficult job. It's a difficult job, Matty. Who would want to do it at the end of the day?
I don't know, man. After meeting and talking to a few judges in Vegas, I can see why they like to do it, and they're just, man, at this point in time, they're just ducks, dude. They just let it all roll off their backs, And it was interesting because you think they might not give any fuck about the sport or anything like that, but they do. They truly do love the sport, and they were talking about Crawford with the same kind of delight and childlike joy as we talk about him after the fight. It's
do you know what I would be very interested to find out, just out of interest? what sort of money would judges and referees, what sort of remuneration would they receive? Obviously, you'd expect maybe for bigger fights, it would be a bit more, but
I can't remember any numbers. I swear I might have even asked. But I can't remember any numbers. But the big part of it for them is like accommodations.
Yeah, getting put up and all, isn't it?
That's the thing. So like, if you're somebody who likes traveling and stuff like that, and like especially like food tourism, like just going and eating at good restaurants and shit
Beans
like
on
that.
toast for the IBO.
No, God, no. I'm talking about Beauty and Essex in Las Vegas, Steve. The most delicious meal that I have ever had in my life. Coming to the Mohegan Sun in Connecticut, by the way. Absolutely fucking delicious. Oh my fucking Lord. I can't even put into to words.
See that comment from MB, Steve?
But so...
Which one's that?
What the referees get?
Oh, yeah. £1,500 type deposit.
But but like a lot of them, like you have to remember though, like if you look at these cards, Steve, and we see the 4 cards on top, the 4 fights on top, maybe 5 if they have previous viewing on YouTube or whatever. But there's probably 10, 11 fights on that card, and it doesn't matter if they go the distance or not. They can judge a handful of those fights in the same night. So it's not all like in one, but it's by by an hourly wage. I think judges do pretty damn good if you look at it that way.
Mm-hmm. Now you can see how the things filter down, even in the media and all. I had a few nice dinners in my day back by certain promoters, and maybe they're looking for more favourable treatment, and absolutely, I'll give it to him. So yeah, it is a bit of an old boys club in that regard. Right, let's move on to the next bits and pieces for next weekend. Sky on Saturday evening, Caroline Dubois in action, Vidal Riley on the undercard, Francesca Hennessy. Mick's daughter is making her debut. Callum Simpson as well. Not going to bother talking about that. Really not interested in that one.
Mick's daughter, heavyweight?
Yeah. Oh, no, I don't know. No, I don't think she's heavyweight now. No, she's
a little tiddler.
Yeah, she's quick off the draw.
Yeah.
Michael Hennessy as well. Young Mick was turning. I think he's fighting. Is he fighting Harley Benn? I think on one of the. I think it's the Buatsi Aziz on the card actually. Michael Hennessy Jr. is in action.
Interesting.
Yeah, as far as I know, should be a good fight. Can't punch, but he's in exciting fights. Dominic over in Turkey next Saturday. We did touch upon this one earlier on. Let's boil it right down. Murat Gassiev against Otto Wallin. If Gassiev can't hurt him, then I think it's just going to be a wide decision for Wallin. That's really the main point of intrigue for me.
Yeah, I would agree, and I would say, isn't he a southpaw?
Yes.
I would say that Gassiev would have trouble with that, especially.
Based off his Usyk performance and the trouble he had trying to get in range there.
Yeah, based on that, I think, the fight that he had, the semi-final of the Super Series against the Cuban fella, what was his name again? Not Duradola, the other guy. I can't remember his name. Great fight it was, but that guy was more right in front of him, and he didn't. Dortico, yes. Great fight that was, and he didn't have to work hard to find him. But based on the Usyk fight, and the inactivity he's had, not that Wallin has had huge amount of activity either, but
and his competition has been pretty poor recently for what Wallin has fought.
Yeah, it's I would go for a sort of points decision. Where is that fight, Steve? Is it in
Turkey?
Jesus, Turkey.
You going?
Yeah, you sure about that Wallin decision pick there, buddy?
I'm going to the launch. I'm going to the launch of Carl Broughton's autobiography, Steve, as you well know.
Yeah, that's why you'll not be there.
So I'm otherwise engaged, but what platform is carrying it? Is there any television UK?
Not that I'm aware of, but the promoter, which I was interested in, Andy mentioned this last week. So it's Patriot Promotions, Alexei Avsetsin, it's a Russian name, Kirill Complete Decision, and Evgeny Voyenshin, Ural Boxing Promotions. So it's a sort of Eurasian Russian kind of promotion going on here in Turkey.
Sounds like a great bunch.
It's all on the up and up.
Yeah, it's in a hotel, the Regnum Carrier Hotel.
Is Wallin? Is he promoted or represented by Dimitri Salita?
Dimitri Salita, yes.
I think they cut ties, actually.
Yeah, he was trying to get away from him, wasn't he? I don't know if he's still with him or not.
Because even Salita, he sort of cuts deals with. He was sort of reduced to, fighting on away shows a lot of the time, wasn't he? He's a manager as opposed to a promoter. He's not putting on his own shows. So his guys were sort of, mostly fighting on away from home.
No, Clarissa Shields is his fighter.
And there's a few other female fighters, isn't there, Molly? I think there's a few other female fighters that he has.
Probably, but I'm struggling to think of who at this point in time.
The girl who popped positive recently.
Oh, Baumgartner.
I know someone else. The one who.
Oh, Hannah Gabriel's.
Yeah, I think her. But anyway, it's. I would like to see Valine. Well, if you say Steve, he's cut ties with him. You'd like to see Valine get promoted by someone with the ability to sort of maneuver him in the position for a shot. But I would go for Valine on points 8 rounds to 4, something like that. Maybe even wider, actually.
Mm-hmm. Matty, a lot of people are overlooking a factor in this fight. Gassiev is sort of coming into his prime now. He's at 27. He's in his peak.
Is he only 27?
He's been 27 for the last 10 years, hasn't he? No, he's 29 according to Boxrec.
Really?
I don't know what calendar he's operated off. Must be a Gregorian calendar or something. His birthday must be on the leap year.
I'm having a hard time fucking processing that because when did he fight Usyk in 17?
Oh gosh, yeah.
18?
No, 18 or so, wasn't it? I think.
18,
yeah.
So he would have been like 24?
I don't know. They said he's 29 on Boxrec. I don't believe that for a second. I think that's bollocks.
Who trains him now? Because he was with Sanchez up until the Usyk fight, wasn't he?
Yeah, I don't know. He had a Armenian fellow or one of the Russian fellas in his corner, I think, in his last fight. I can't remember. I'm not sure. Who are you going for, Matty?
God damn, it does say he's getting ready to turn 30 at least. It does say that he was born October 1993 just on Google. I think that Volin has to knock him out. All right. I don't think he's going to get a fair shake on the cards on this one. He might have just be more of a heavyweight than Gassiev that he can make it. So if it does go to points, he really can't argue with it because he's just the big man and he's able to big man him, which you've seen him do. Even as a shorter fighter against Fury, he got rough in there, man. He is not afraid to go dark arts. But we'll see what happens. I think he should be favored. I'm shocked that he's paying 3-1, but I think that lends to the fact that that they know who the favorite is going into this fight with the promoters. So I'd be very, very leery of putting money on Otto on this one, but he should win it, and he just might get screwed.
What are you thinking, Des? I know you made your thoughts known earlier on. You, Valine, maybe do enough to get it on the cards, do you think?
Yeah, quite succinctly, Steve. I've not seen a lot of either of them. But what I've seen of Volin I like, and what I've seen of Gassiev I don't like. I'm going to go with Volin.
There we are. Des is going for Volin as well. We'll see what's on the prediction league for this week. I know we're having a bit of a turnover at the moment. Patreon.com/Boxing Asylum if you want to join the Nutters group, the prediction league, and all the other bits and pieces.
The new season is going to start in early October. This is the last week for picks of this season. So if you want to get in on the fun, you can still join Patreon, get in the WhatsApp group, and we will take you from there. Just to make sure you announce yourself and that you want to be involved.
Thank you very much,
Matty.
Steve,
can I just say one thing, mate?
Yes.
I've got to slip off, but I wanted to say it's good talking to you, Matty and Dominic, and big shout out to all the guys in the chat. They're a terrific bunch. And that WhatsApp group, it's well worth joining a Patreon just to be part of that. It really is a good group of guys and Holly.
Brilliant stuff. Thank you very much, Des. Pleasure to have you on. Cheers, as always. You're always welcome.
All the best. Have a good week, everyone. Ta-da.
Bye.
Even Steve.
There's Des.
We're going to have to start sprinting here, Steve.
Yeah, I know we're going to have to. My voice is killing. I'm just going to cursory mention this because I can't be bothered getting into it, in all honesty. Jay Opetaya's fighting Jordan Thompson. IBF World Cruiserweight title. Looking forward to seeing Opetaya back in action. Not dismissing him. Seeing how he's holding up after the Brady's fight. Thompson, quite why he's getting a world title opportunity after 15 fights, I don't know. Siobhan Clark's on the undercard, Rhiannon Dixon, as I say. I just can't put the vocal cord action into that one tonight, so I'm going to skip over it.
Yeah, Ali Scottney in her first title fight against a very, very weak opponent. Very shameful work by the IBF on that one.
Is that a world title or an interim, or what's that, Matty?
IBF 122.
IBF 122. Yeah, so it's last week. I know you weren't with us, Matty, but we went over Canelo-Charlo. We've done it in the Nutters group as well. We've done it earlier on with Des. So please feel free to add in anything that you feel still needs to be added in, Matty, without, I don't think we'll go too much into depth now because we've all had our say. I've written a lot about it, etc. But if there's anything you want to jump in about Canelo-Charlo, if you think the upset's on, etc., throw it in now, Matty, by all means.
Well, I think honestly, like the entire card is pretty solid at this point in time, Steve, and I'm looking forward to it. I know you don't want to go too long, but there's some stuff that I think
you say what needs to be said. It's all good, man.
Yeah. So for me, I'm looking at like there's a lot of chances for upsets on this card. You have a really interesting fight, I think, with Erickson Lubin taking on Jesus Ramos. And that one, it's
great
interesting.
Fun.
Yeah, it's interesting because both of those guys, southpaws, both of them have fought 3 southpaws in their career. But interestingly enough, Lubin, last time he fought a southpaw was Fundora, and that didn't end well for him. But then the other 2 were in the first 3 fights in his career.
Wow.
Yeah, Ramos, some southpaws earlier in his career, Vladimir Hernandez, more recently February of 2022. Ramos is a big favorite in this one. I would hesitate on that one because he hasn't fought a murderer's row of punchers, Steve. I think if there's anything that's missing on his resume, it might be a real puncher. And we do know that Lubin has a variety of shots. He can definitely put you down. He's put a few guys out.
He had success against Fundora, and Ramos is a big unit as well. So we know Lubin can have success against bigger guys.
Yeah, and he's obviously not as big as Fundora, so it'll be interesting to see if Lubin can find that angle just a little bit better for that long left hand.
He's a hard bastard, Lubin. He's a hard bastard.
Yep,
He'll take a beating.
I think if this one goes the distance, I would be surprised. Lubin, his 2 losses have been by knockout, so I'm looking forward to this one. Good fight, another one where the underdog Lubin paying more than 3-1 on that one. And then we're also going to have that fight between Yordenis Ugas and Mario Barrios. Barrios has definitely been more active recently. He fought in February, and he stopped Giovanni Santiago, who's a pretty durable fighter, went the distance with Adrian Broner in a fight that I think without the point deduction, he actually would have had a pretty fair chance of winning on the judges' cards in a fair world. You have to remember that Yordenis Ugas hasn't fought in 18 months. He hasn't fought since that fight against Errol Spence. Both of them have the big fight experience. I don't think the scene is going to give them much of a problem, but it's, Barrios is a tough fighter. He works a lot behind the jab. He has a variety of different shots that he can throw. He has that uppercut. He's very tall. I know he's moved up in weight, and we think of him fighting 140, 135. He's a 6 foot tall guy. Big dude. Last time that Ugas fought anyone of that close around that height was going to be Bryant Perella in 2016. So I'm looking forward to that one. You also have Elijah Garcia on that card as well. I'm trying to remember who his opponent was on that one.
This is going to be a war. This is going to be a good fight.
It could be. It could be. Resendez beat Jared Hurd in his last fight. He kind of got derailed as a prospect, losing a little bit earlier on. But this is an interesting 160-pound fight for a guy, Garcia. I think he's 19 or 20 years old. This is a young guy. So we shall see on that one. It's a big step up. But you also have Alexander Vostok is going to be on the undercard as well. I think maybe that might be available on YouTube optimistically. And then there's also a few 6-round fights between some undefeated guys, which could be interesting if you take a look at them. This card is going to be fully entertaining. But the main event, I used to think it might not be that good, but now I'm kind of coming around to it. I still think Canelo wins, but I do think it's a depleted Canelo. It's an 80% Canelo, but I do think that's enough to beat Charlo, and I think Canelo knows he needs a big showing in this fight to kind of keep his career momentum going and make the most out of this PBC contract. So I'm looking for him probably to get the stoppage late in this one. Like I said earlier, Castaño, those 2 fights with Charlo were great. Eventually, Charlo was able to figure him out. but that when Castagna was able to get in his chest, he was able to cause Charlo a whole lot of problems. And I think there's going to be some moments at close distance where Canelo is going to be able to kind of exert his own will on Charlo, and those body shots are going to add up. And you'll see Canelo probably with a stoppage in the last few rounds of the fight, and he might be coming from behind on the cards to do it.
There you are. Matty's made his prediction. I would side with Canelo on points. It's going to be tough for Charlo, I think, in the later rounds, but I think he'll manage to make it out. But wouldn't be surprised if he pushes him close, but it's hard to get the decision. Dominic, what are you going for the main event? And also, you're loving the look of the undercard as well. It's shaping up nicely for your liking.
Yeah, just what Matty was saying there about Vostik. I'm interested in following his comeback trail. I saw his first comeback fight was on the undercard of Canelo and Ryder. So maybe there's some arrangement where he's on Canelo's undercards. I don't know. Yes, because he's being trained by Eddie Reynoso, isn't he? That's right. He's being trained now by Eddie Reynoso, so he's obviously, I think, going to be appearing on Canelo's cards. But that's I didn't realize that the undercard was just as deep. I know we touched on it last week, but Matty really fleshed it out there. But just what it was about the type end of the chat there, Steve. I was just checking about the UK broadcaster for this card. And as yet, no UK broadcaster has picked it up. So fingers crossed that, usually when that happens at Fight TV, usually pick it up on Fight Week. I would hope that they do. Because definitely I would try and stay up for it. But yeah, that's a great card. Definitely the Lubin Ramos fight, that really does whet my appetite. I would look forward to that big time. But I would go for Canelo main event. I think Canelo will win on points. Probably like an 8 rounds to 4 sort of decision. And I think Charlo, I think he might be content to hear the final bell and take his check and go elsewhere. So I would go for Canelo on points.
Canelo on points. Take your check and go elsewhere. A good comment from Dominic there. Right, I think that is all of the previews, reviews, questions, comments, etc. that we have for tonight. Let's get on to the belly of the week for episode 541. Dominic's here. Matty's here, Steve's here as well. There's a thriving chat, about 14,000 in there as well for the Joyce Zhang knockout. Shout out to them. I'm not going to give individual shout outs. Let's just see if we can get through it. Here's one you're going to like, actually, Dominic, to play us in for the belly of the week. Porky was coming up with an interesting solution to the Frank Smith versus Frank Warren debate as to what they should do to settle this intense beef.
Spotty Frank and Bricktop need to work together, or they need to go in a room, the door needs to be shut, and they need to get at it. You know?
Fighting in thought.
Is he saying they should fight or they should bang?
I don't know. Interesting stuff from Porky there. Also, you might want to get a ticket for this or not, Dominic. I was having a look for your benefit as well as mine, and seeing if the Big John UK tour was indeed hitting the streets of Belfast. But alas, no, there will be no Big John in September or October at the Big John tour. And if you can't catch him there,
how's the Chinese food in Belfast, Steve?
You can get a good Chinese, Dominic, can't you? At various restaurants and outlets.
Yeah, I'm an Indian man myself, Steve. If I go at that, but I had a close relative who's now deceased, but she used to love her Chinese, and she used to call it the Chinese the chinkers. She was actually my godmother, actually, and but just to say that times, like nowadays you wouldn't dream of
saying that out loud,
like, as I just did. But she used to love her chinkers on a Saturday night. But yeah,
who's going to get cancelled first? Also, the British Board of Boxing Control,
or as Porky would say, of no control. On Big John, I find him. Anytime I see his face pop up, I just ignore it. I find him thoroughly uninteresting. I have to be honest. I like to be honest when I come on here, but I find him. I actually don't find it funny at all. I just find it. I just find it. I just couldn't give a toss about him. I don't even find it funny. I just find it. I just
moving on.
Move on.
Well, good news is he's going to Australia and New Zealand, so he won't be your problem for a period of time.
If he makes it down there, good luck to him. That's what I say. Anyway, back to the real boxers. Devin Haney was on Twitter. He says, Gamboa, Linares, Jojo Diaz, Cambosos ×2, Loma and Prograis next. 24 years old. Only compare me to greats, because only greats have done it. Dan Canobio is backing up. Do more than your counterparts, he says. Faint praise indeed from Dan there. Only the greats. Devin Haney is in good company. Talking of good company, Rick Glazer was making some clarifications this week. He said, to put some rumours to rest, my wife is not a mail order bride. Sonia does not wear a wig, and I did not buy my wife. In reality, up till marriage, we lived a mile away from each other since 1999. We met by accident in 2012 at a local fine dining establishment. My wasn't Jinkers, was it? My wife was the owner of a high-quality boutique home nursing agency. Till the pandemic, she's very financially stable, even without yours truly. Please stop with the insults of my lovely wife, Matty, of what will be 10 years in November. Thank you. That's you told. Leave him alone.
People are insulting his wig-wearing wife. What the fuck's up with this shit?
Oh, he's class, isn't he? Old Rick Glazer. I still don't know what he does anyway. This one, I spotted this one during the week on Boxing News 24. 7 world champions who retired undefeated. Number 7 was Edwin Valero. I think retired undefeated. It's a bit of a stretch, like. Boxing News 24.
To be fair, he did go out on his own terms, if you believe the Venezuelan government's events.
I suppose so. Oh, dear me. Anyway, Abe Morales was looking up possible future fights for Conor Benn. He said, that'd be a good fight. A good test of skills for Ben. He's talking about Gennady Golovkin. Wonder if Gennady would take it. It'd be great for his career too. Lots of publicity. Lots of publicity there, Dominic, for Golovkin, fighting someone like Ben of his stature.
I saw this during the week. I would be surprised actually if Golovkin. I would be surprised if he actually knows who Ben is. Quite frankly, you know, I'd say he hasn't heard of Ben. There's talk of Golovkin once won final fight in Kazakhstan. To round out of his career. Can you imagine Ben going out to flipping Astana or Karaganda and fighting Golovkin? You know, it'd be I don't know. Some of these folk, as I say on Twitter, it's an endless source of examples of idiocy and stupidity. Just where they get some of these people, I don't know.
He might get sold into sexual slavery if he ends up going over there, you'd think, wouldn't you?
Well, as we all know, Kazakhstan is the greatest country in the world. All other countries are run by little girls.
I never said that. Oh, dear. Smido hasn't been spotted for a while, but he was on Twitter. He says, Tyson Fury, Tommy Fury, Huey Fury, yet to face a professional boxer in 2023. # fighting men. Fighting talk from Smido there. He's not happy about the old boxing scene.
That's a good one.
That is a good one. Yeah. Chris Eubank Jr.'s epic birthday cake following his victory over Liam Smith earlier this month. # revenge. Happy
Dude, I
birthday,
kind of
motherfuckers.
like that. That's fucking cool. Fair play.
Good, isn't it?
I wonder if they're bringing that to Bomac and they have a one of them files hidden in there so we can get out.
There was some people were saying that he didn't look like himself. That he looked like like a slim version of Tyson Fury or something. And the wee man, and the wee that he didn't look. There was some other example. Someone mentioned Tyson Fury and someone else, can't remember. He doesn't look exactly like him. He's like some other fighters there, but maybe even like would you say Avni Yildirim, Steve? No,
I wouldn't say Avni Yildirim.
No, he wasn't.
Wouldn't compare him to a great like Yildirim.
Was Yildirim bald? Was he?
No, Yildirim wasn't. He had a fine head of hair.
He did. He had that's right. He had it.
Doing well for himself. British Boxing Board of Control's Robert Smith has insisted that Conor Benn has not cleared his name. I'm not sure why that's in Belly of the Week. We'll move on. We talked about that earlier, didn't we? Anyway, James Gift 2009 was referring earlier to the fella from Boxing News Plus, I think it was Dominic, who was going in on Eddie, and people were giving him a pat on the back, as we did with Ames back in the day. But James Gift 2009 said, all's fair in the world of boxing, fan of Andy, but he tried to be Simon Jordan, and Eddie dealt with him like he deals with Simon Jordan, lol. There you go. Dealt with by Eddie. Doesn't like being questioned. Eddie. We'll move on. Kamil Sokolowski, former heavyweight who was recently banned from professional boxing for 3 years following a positive drugs test, has signed with bare knuckle boxing promotion BKB.
That is awesome.
Aussie won't be happy with that.
No, exactly. Absolutely.
No, it's going to make him a bare knuckle boxing fan. You just wait and see.
It's an absolute disgrace.
He's going to find his true calling.
Someone sent this to me. Apparently, this fella laid down 160 notes on a signed Conor Benn glove and a picture as well. So it's there with his Phil the Power Taylor and his Kevin Keegan as well. He's delighted with that. With Conor coming back this weekend in Florida, very much active.
Yeah, it was for a good cause, though. All proceeds went to poultry farmers across the nation.
Excellent idea. Sam Jones was getting in on the action last night. He said Joe Joyce was not himself last time. No idea what went on, but it wasn't him in there. This was before the fight, about 10 to 8, I think, in the evening. I don't want to discredit Zhang. He won fair and square, but if Joe Joyce is the Joe Joyce I know, he will win tonight and win in style. Write him off at your peril. We can't laugh at Sam. Bunsey was in the action as well. He said, at Wembley, on Boxing TNT, and I'm convinced that Joe Joyce wins and wins in style. Fancy him big, big. Adam Stokes says, why fancy him big, big? Ask him from a punter's perspective. And Bunsey says, he's so much better than the Joe in the fight one. Simple. They are, Dominic. That's case closed.
And funny, he's just published his latest opinion piece in the Independent. I've lobbed it into the chat there, the others chat. And he's calling for Joyce to retire. So it just shows you what sort of change can happen in 24 hours.
Flexibility, I call it. Versatility and flexibility from Steve Bunsey. He's not afraid to change his mind.
Yeah, and for anybody suffering from bipolar disorder, please seek help from a medical professional.
Raymond Nolan tweeted out McGuigan's gym and Paddy Barnes. He says, get a box for the gym, world champion crisps, Barry's onion rings, corn snacks from the boxing ring. And Paddy responded, Dominic, count your fingers after eating a packet.
That's a cracker, isn't it? Like Paddy's unreal at that. There, he's. I'd say that boy Raymond Nolan knew what he was doing. He knew what he was
tagging him in. Yeah,
he was setting him up for that. It's a cracker, isn't it?
It's a good job, almost as good as this one, which you picked out to me. ESPN celebrating Joyce's trainer. Go to Adam Booth away from Ishmael Salad.
This was a nice stream last night, right? There was. Shout out to one of the others, but it was a very good stream, worked the treat, and it was obviously no, actually, sorry, it wasn't that. I watched the fight back. I watched the fight back a second time after it because I wanted to watch it again just to see it. And the second stream I got was ESPN with Timmy Bradley and that guy that you like, Steve. What's his name?
Bernardo Osuna.
No. The one that Steve really likes.
Oh yeah.
And anyway, I it was in between rounds, and funny between the rounds, I was fast forwarding and I didn't want to watch what was going on between rounds. But this particular round, in between it, I wanted to see just what was going on. And this just caught my mind. I thought, is that a D or an S at the end of his name? And I was sort of trying to work out, have they done this deliberately? Has someone done that deliberately, do you think? Or is it just an honest mistake?
You think there's a troll in the camp?
I would like there's something sort of funny about thinking that someone may have done it deliberately, you know?
ESPN are usually good for those things. PBC, Matty, they love a spelling mistake, I've noticed, especially the old, wasn't it Fox used to do the PBC? There
was some good ones on there. Yeah. But no, I just think that calling him Ishmael Salad is a hint to Joe Joyce that his trainer should be tossed. And I thank you.
Very good indeed. Hang on, let me see if I can find a little drum roll for you there, Matty, to celebrate that little gag. There we go.
If not, you always have feeding the ducks.
There we are. We're getting through it as best as we can, everybody. Let's have a look. Oh yeah, Mike Hunt there.
Yeah, it says that. Yep.
D is next to S on a keyboard, so it's an easy mistake. So yeah, absolutely, that's a good point. They could have been doing it on the fly, then, boys. A fly in the salad. And this final one here, selling Matchroom for $5 billion. Eddie was saying a few years ago. I'm not really sure how that one's holding up, but he's big plans. You got to shoot for the start.
To be fair, he didn't specify in what currency.
Yeah. Could have been Ugandan dollars, I suppose. Right. I know, Dominic, you sent me a belly of the week from the Times. I'm gonna keep that one to next week if you don't mind, because I tried reading it out earlier and I just couldn't quite manage to get to the end. I'm starting to struggle a bit now, but we managed to get through all those ones. Do you, Matty, have anything to add in for belly of the week, episode 541?
No, I have been dealing with plumbing issues all week.
Plumbing issues for Matty. Dominic, any plumbing issues or any belly of the weeks?
Do you want me to read it out quickly, Steve? I have it here.
Yes, go on then. Yep, go on. Yep, I'll put it on the screen as well.
Yep. So it's Martin Samuel, the chief sports writer of the Times. And I just saw this. One of the nutters last week, I posted something in and from the Times, and he asked me why you ban the Times, and I was just thinking this is why I still buy newspapers, Steve, because you get gems like this. But anyway, he says the title is "A Virtuous Champion Boxer is Anything But." Virtue signaling is another of those phrases that has become divorced from its real meaning. Objecting to human rights abuses around the Qatar World Cup is not virtue signaling, nor is opposing racism. Yet on these pages last week, the undisputed light welterweight champion Chantel Cameron pretty much defined the term. She recalled her time working at Tesco. I'd see a lovely old woman or someone who looked like they needed a good day, and I'd think, I can easily put this chicken through free of charge, she recalled. And then I got sacked. Cameron wants to be seen as a good person, yet that wasn't her donation. She didn't pay for the chicken, she just took credit for its gift. Similarly, a box office employee may feel the good people of Dublin deserve to see Cameron's rematch with Katie Taylor on the 25th of November for nothing. Not their tickets to give away, though, are they?
Fuck yeah, stupid communists.
I was laughing reading that. I thought it was hilarious. I can't believe that no one that had just gone under the radar. But it was funny story.
Giving away the chickens for free. But yeah, I endorsed the final part of the story anyway, with getting the box office. I'm happy with Chantel for that distribution to the poor, so we can all watch her fight with Katie Taylor next month or November, whenever it is. Right, thank you for that, Dominic. Well read. We'll get you in to read some stories again in the future. I'm not going to go through the belly of the weeks, but we're just going to see what the boys fancy this week. I have a couple that I'm interested in, but Matty, I want to know what you're picking this week for your nomination.
God damn it, that's tough because I usually have you go through them and it jogs my memory.
I'll go on then quickly. We'll do it then. We went for John Fisher, but we're cancelling him now on Dominic's say so. Devin Haney as well. We had Rick Glazer. I like that one.
Glazer explaining his wife.
Edwin Valero was
no. Yes, Valero. Yeah, Valero and the retirement. That's good. That's good.
Smido, Eubank. We had James Giff. We had Sokolowski. We had this fella. We had Scam Jones. We had Bunsey. We had Paddy Barnes on the crisp was a good one. Ishmael Salad. Eddie Hearn, 5 billion. And the Times as well. Yeah, it's between Valero. You going for Valero, Matty? Yeah.
Yep. Valero and his retirement.
Yeah, I like that one. I'm not sure either Glazer or Valero for me. Dominic, who are you going for?
I'm going for. Because you guys, you and Matty have gone for Valero, so I'll just be an honorary mention for Paddy Barnes. I thought that was great, but just because I want to go on to next week. But Edwin Valero then he gets the nod.
Congratulations, Edwin Valero. He's had a tough time of it over the recent years, but he is the Belly of the Week champion for episode 541. Undefeated.
Still getting the W's from beyond the grave.
Still getting the W's from beyond the grave. The Venezuelan destroyer. And that is where we shall end it. We managed for 2 hours and 20 minutes on this Sunday evening. Thank you to everybody who's been in the chat as well. We had Des on earlier. Some good discussion with Des. We've had Matty on as well. And we've had Dominic. No rapping Bob Kelly this week. Hopefully he's okay. Ozzy is away, but he should be back. And Andy should be back next week as well to talk about Canelo-Charlo. Don't forget to hit the like, thumbs up, subscribe, and do all those beautiful things. I've been Steve Wellings. Matty will be in the hot seat next week. We'll be here for the same time, same place, episode 542. And goodbye for now.
We'll never forget.
Golly, that's good happening.
Go to and move!
We want to be honest, yeah?
Crying like a little bitch.
I've never met a fucking swank that can fight me.
I fell asleep. I fell asleep.
You're a fucking bum, you're a fucking asshole.
Rumpo fucking stiltskin.
But allegedly, Oscar Rivas has failed a test.
7-year aim. 7-year aim.
I will fucking smash fucking you.
I hope you fucking die.
Be safe.
I love boxing sounds, as simple as that.